The JRPG genre has been evolving for around 40 years now. It has seen its share of ups and downs, but right now, it is arguably in the best place that it has ever been. Since the early 80s, we've seen the releases of thousands of JRPGs or JRPG style titles from hundreds of different developers. But it goes without saying that not all of them are created equally. Some are works of art, while others are not works of art. This video is going to look at the very best, or at least my very best. This is my personal top 100 JRPGs of all time. And while being around the 100 mark may initially seem like a bad thing, I assure you that there are many JRPGs that did not make the cut. Each and every one of these titles gave me a load of enjoyment, and all 100 of them are very easy to recommend. I think it also goes without saying that I haven't played every JRPG in existence, so if there's something that I didn't mention, I probably haven't played it, or maybe I just didn't like it. Yep, this list is entirely subjective and constantly changing. I am certain my top 100 will be different to yours, so let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Is something too high? Is something too low? What do you think? Before we get into it, if you get any enjoyment out of this video, hitting that like button, the super thanks or commenting would help me out a lot. You could also sub for more JRPG content coming soon. Any support at all would be greatly appreciated. Alright, let's get into it. What perfect way to kick off this countdown. At number 100, we have Final Fantasy. Released in 1987 for the Famicom, the original Final Fantasy is one of the most iconic and important titles in influencing and popularizing the genre. I mean, it would obviously be a lot higher on the list if we were talking about the most significant JRPGs of all time, but we are not. With that said, FF1 is still absolutely worth playing, and I believe it should be experienced by all JRPG fans. There is something super nostalgic about choosing the names and classes of the 4 Warriors of Light and then setting out on a journey to restore the power of the crystals and save the world. Then there's the turn-based combat, which is so simple yet strangely satisfying. And handing over that rat's tail to the Great Bahamut so he can upgrade your classes feels so rewarding. This instant rise in power epitomizes the whole concept of character growth in RPGs. But with the many versions released over the years, what's the best way to play the game? I don't think there's a definitive answer to that, but here's a few good ones. Play the OG NES version if you want to see how things really started, along with its original difficulty. Play the GBA or PSP versions if you want access to quality of life features and extra dungeons. Or play the Pixel Remaster version if you want the most accessible, user-friendly, casual experience. Whichever version you choose, you're still going to get a good idea of where the series started and how it made such a big impact on the JRPG genre as a whole. Now, here's one of the more recent entries on the list, Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince. This is a spin-off title set in the Dragon Quest universe, but this time we play the role of Saro, who is the antagonist of Dragon Quest IV. This game is an expanded retelling of Saro's journey, focusing on the conflicts between him and his father Randolfo, who is a tyrannical ruler of the underworld. At the start of the game, Randolfo curses his son, making him unable to harm monsters. So, Saro becomes a monster wrangler, capable of taming monsters to fight alongside him. Yep, the standout feature of Dragon Quest: The Dark Prince is its monster catching mechanics. The game is basically a mix between Pokemon and Shin Megami Tensei set in the Dragon Quest universe. There is a plethora of monsters that can be fought and captured around the world, and these monsters can even be synthesized together to create new monsters. This system is highly addictive. There are always so many combinations to play around with, and it was always so much fun returning after a mission to see what new ones could be created. I didn't love Dragon Quest Monsters for its visual, story or character development, I loved it for its gameplay. The gameplay loop of exploring, catching, then synthesizing is elite game design. This is definitely one of the better games out there when it comes to monster catching, so if you're into this kind of game or Dragon Quest in general, then Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince should not be missed. It's time to go back to the PlayStation 2 era with Dark Chronicle, which is known as Dark Cloud 2 in North America. This game centers around Max, a young inventor, and Monica, a princess from the future. Together, they set out on a journey to save the world from the evil Emperor Griffin, who seeks to destroy both the past and the future. Dark Cloud 2 stands out for its unique mix of gameplay. First, there's the dungeon crawling aspect. These dungeons are randomly generated and full of enemies, treasures, and crafting and building materials. Then there's a diorama system, where players use their collected resources to build towns by placing roads, buildings, trees, and other structures. These can be arranged any way you wish, and the way that you rebuild them will impact the future, unlocking new quests and items. You can also recruit NPCs to live in your town, each contributing to the development and function of the community. Another feature that has always stuck with me is Dark Cloud 2's very own golf minigame called Sfida. The mechanics here are quite deep, and you'll need to consider a range of factors including power, spin, and the colour of the Sfida ball going into the hole. And for you fishing fans, there's also a pretty decent fishing minigame with different locations, gear, contests, and even breeding mechanics. If you missed out on this title back in the day, you can download it on the PlayStation Store. Next we have Tri-Ace's Valkyrie Profile. Released in 1999 for the PlayStation 1, Valkyrie Profile is not your everyday run-of-the-mill JRPG and has become somewhat of a cult classic. The game is set in a world inspired by Norse mythology and delves into themes of fate, redemption, and the afterlife, which is also cool. The story revolves around Lenneth, a Valkyrie who is tasked by Odin to recruit Einherjar, who are fallen warriors. These Einherjar are chosen to serve in Valhalla to fight in the upcoming Battle of Ragnarok. As you travel around recruiting Einherjar, you'll learn about their personalities and backstories and what has led them to the final moments of their lives. While doing this, Lenneth will also uncover the truths of her own past, leading to some significant choices that impact the story. On that note, while the whole story premise is really awesome, it's almost impossible to get ending A without a guide. I highly recommend using one if you want to get the most out of the game. Other than that, you can expect 2D platforming exploration of towns and dungeons and a fair share of puzzles to solve. There's also a unique turn-based combat system with a large focus on combos and chain attacks and a little bit of Nibelung Velesti.
It shall be engraved upon your soul! Divine Assault, Nibelung Velesti!
If you want to see what this cult classic is all about, you can check it out on the PlayStation Store. The World Ends With You is an incredibly unique title that is unlike anything you've ever played before. This action JRPG was originally developed by Square Enix for the Nintendo DS but later ported to the Switch. The story revolves around Neku, who wakes up in the bustling Shibuya district of Tokyo with no memory of how he got there. He soon discovers that he's in an alternate dimension known as the Underground, where he must participate in the Reaper's game. This is a high-stakes contest where its players must compete in a series of missions over the course of a week to avoid being erased permanently. This story delves into themes of trust, friendship, and self-discovery as Neku learns to open up and connect with others while surviving the Reaper's game. This entire premise is one of the best parts of the game. I also have to make a special mention to the soundtrack, which features a mix of rock, hip-hop, and electronic music. This soundtrack probably wouldn't fit too well in any other JRPG I've ever played, but it absolutely does here. Then there's a unique combat which makes full use of the DS's or the Switch's touch controls. Battling involves tapping on enemies and drawing different shapes to activate different attacks and abilities. This is one of those rare Switch games that I almost completely played in handheld mode because of these touch controls. The World Ends With You is an experience like no other and absolutely worthy of a spot in my top 100. Next up, we have Brave Fencer Musashi, released on the PlayStation 1 in 1998. As you would expect, the game follows Musashi, who is a young swordsman summoned to the All-You-Can-Eat Kingdom to defend it from the Thirst Quencher Empire. To save the kingdom and to rescue the princess, Musashi will need to venture out to obtain 5 scrolls which contain the powers needed to enhance his sword Lumina. As you've probably gathered by now, Musashi is an extremely light-hearted, humorous adventure. There is a never-ending abundance of cheesy dialogue, but I will say that it's one of the most charming titles on the PlayStation 1. Brave Fencer Musashi is very different to Square's other titles released around the same time due to its focus on action gameplay with RPG elements. The town acts as the main hub of the game, and from here, Musashi can venture out to about a dozen dungeon-like areas, and this is where most of the platforming and action-based combat takes place. When out exploring, Musashi is able to absorb the abilities of monsters with his sword, and these abilities can be used to take on other enemies or solve puzzles and other challenges. Each of these areas is filled with secrets to uncover, such as finding and freeing all of the town's inhabitants who have been put into stasis and scattered around the place. By doing this, you'll be able to interact with them back in town for a range of different benefits. Brave Fencer Musashi is one of those games that could really use a modern re-release. If you do want to give it a go, you'll either have to buy it on the PS1 or download it on the PS3, PSP or Vita PlayStation stores. Next, we have a title that I feel is very underrated and perhaps outshined by some of the other titles in the series. I'm talking about Star Ocean 4: The Last Hope. This game takes players a few hundred years before the events of the original game and follows the story of young pilot Edge Maverick as he sets out with his crew to find a new home for humanity. If you can get past Lim and her horrendous dialogue and voice acting, there is a lot to like about this game. I think my favourite thing about Star Ocean 4 is that you're finally able to actually explore the ocean of stars, as the series title suggests. In the other games, the majority of the story is told on a single underdeveloped planet, but this time there are many planets that can be explored, and this is something that I really want to see more of in the series. When it comes to the combat, despite its rather large learning curve, it's one of my favourite in the series. A big focus of this system is the blindside mechanic, which can be achieved by timing your dodges. This leaves the enemy vulnerable to attacks, allowing you to unleash powerful counterattacks. I understand that Star Ocean 4 isn't everyone's cup of tea, but I feel that it's easily one of the strongest titles in the series. Granblue Fantasy Relink is a game that was seemingly in development for an eternity. First announced in 2016, after a load of development challenges, it was finally released in 2024, and yes, it was worth the wait. Granblue Fantasy Relink tells the story of Captain Gran, who wears the colour blue. Yep, the title definitely checks out. Gran and his crew of Skyfarers are on a journey to find the mythical land of Estalucia, which involves them travelling the skies on an airship called the Grand Cypher. This game gave me some massive Skies of Arcadia vibes in its airships, Skyfarers, and the floating lands. But the story isn't really the main focus of the game. It's short and more or less a means to get you back into the action, which is where the game truly shines. You can take 4 characters into each mission, but you can only control one at a time. This is also one of those rare games that you can't switch your controlled character after the mission has been accepted. This action-based combat doesn't reinvent the wheel, but it does work exceptionally well. Abilities are on a cooldown, there's a massive emphasis on blocking and dodging, and to deal massive damage, you can chain together skybound arcs. The most impressive thing here, however, is the amount of characters that can be unlocked. Each of these characters work so differently to one another, ensuring that combat never gets stale. The basic mechanics will only take about 10 to 20 minutes to get used to, but a lot longer if you want to master them and customize them to your liking. However, the depth of these characters can only be fully realized in the post-game. It's like after you watch the credits roll, the game's true potential finally opens up. If you're after a gorgeous JRPG with a focus on action combat and character customization, Granblue Fantasy Relink is definitely worth checking out. The original Trials of Mana, or Seiken Densetsu 3 as it was named in Japan, was one of the most beloved JRPGs of my childhood. Despite not making it to the West until 2019 as part of the collection of Mana, the game did initially manage to build a huge following thanks to an English fan translation, which is where I was first introduced to the game. This top 100 entry is going to show my love for both the original and the recent remake. Trials of Mana features 6 playable characters, each having their own playstyles and unique plot points. In addition to your main chosen character, you can choose another 2 to form your party, so there's a decent amount of replayability in this regard. The main plot focuses on a quest to find the Mana Sword, which is needed to restore balance and prevent the world from falling into chaos. For me, the action combat was the best part of the whole experience and created some really intense boss battles. Nothing about the gameplay is revolutionary. It's simple, but it's still a lot of fun. Now, the recent remake may not be the definitive way to play the game, as it's missing one core feature from the original version. I have such fond memories crowding around the screen with my friends and cooperatively playing the game with all of the different characters. Unfortunately, this co-op feature was taken away from the remake, but this does at least mean that both versions have their own place and will provide different forms of enjoyment. Resonance of Fate, known as End of Eternity in Japan, is another Tri-Ace classic. Originally released for the PS3 and 360 in 2010, it was later remastered for the PS4 and PC in 2018. Resonance of Fate is set in a dystopian future where the world's atmosphere has become heavily polluted, making it almost uninhabitable. To survive, humanity constructs a massive air purification system called Basil. This is watched over by its AI mechanical core Zenith, and this becomes the center of the new civilization. The 3 main characters, Zephyr, Leanne, and Vacheron, soon get involved in a series of events that uncover the truth behind the Zenith system and its impact on humanity. While this premise is really cool, Resonance of Fate's standout feature is the battle system, which blends strategy with real-time action. This tri-attack battle system is unlike anything that I've ever experienced. Each character can move around the battlefield based on their AP, then unleash an attack. A key factor here is utilizing the 2 different damage types. First, you'll need to inflict scratch damage with your submachine guns, and then follow it up with direct damage with your pistols and grenades. This combat does have a steep learning curve due to its complexities, but once you learn the ropes, you're in for a ride. Resonance of Fate is a title that isn't often talked about, but its unique mechanics make it absolutely worthy of a spot in my top 100.
Rend, slaughter, devour your enemies. There is no other way to survive.
At number 90, we have a duology of titles that are directly related to one another, but I'm counting them as a single entry here. Originally released in the mid-2000s for the PS2, Digital Devil Saga 1 and 2 are spin-offs of the Shin Megami Tensei series. These games are set in a dystopian world called the Junkyard, where various tribes fight for survival and dominance. The story begins with the tribes being infected by a demon virus, granting them the ability to turn into demons. To ascend to the promised land Nirvana, they must battle it out and devour their enemies. Digital Devil Saga follows a group of characters from the Embryon tribe led by Surf. As these characters uncover the hidden truths about their world, their identities, and the nature of their existence, they'll also face struggles in dealing with their new monstrous abilities and the ethical dilemmas of their survival instincts. Throw in a mysterious girl who fell from the sky and holds all the answers, and you'll be guessing what's going on throughout the entire game. I really liked this story. The dark dystopian setting and atmosphere, the mystery, and the characters were the things that really stood out for me. Then you've got your typical SMT press-turn combat system, which places a large emphasis on exploiting enemy weaknesses. This means that you'll be swapping party members in and out very frequently. There are also some pretty brutal difficulty spikes with some absolutely insanely difficult super bosses, so if you're up for a challenge, look no further. Digital Devil Saga is one of those games that is in desperate need of some sort of re-release. Fingers crossed that it happens soon. After playing through Phantasy Star 4 at the end of the millennium, nearly 30 years after it was released, it was easy to see why it was such a hit and why many people today still consider it one of their favourite RPGs of all time. Originally released in '93 for the Sega Genesis/Mega Drive, The End of the Millennium is the fourth title in the original Phantasy Star series. While the game is set 1000 years after Phantasy Star 2, it is still considered a standalone title, so you don't need to play any of the others to enjoy it. Phantasy Star 4 features a great blend of the fantasy and sci-fi genres, and I am a sucker for this type of setting. You play the role of Chaz, a young hunter who teams up with a fellow hunter Elise to solve some local problems. This soon leads to hunting down an evil cult leader, which then escalates into a much larger issue spanning over multiple planets. The story is very solid, and the characters that join up with you are all unique and likeable, and this creates some very entertaining party interactions. Something that I loved about this game is the comic book style presentation used to deliver the key scenes. These are the equivalent to what cutscenes or FMV sequences would be in later console generations. As you would expect from a retro game such as this, the turn-based combat is fairly simple. You can bring 5 characters into battle, and this lineup will change through the game based on where you are in the story. One of the standout features of this combat was the introduction of macros, which basically lets you pre-program character actions prior to battle. This not only helps you get through battles a lot quicker, but also assists in unleashing powerful combo attacks between your characters. If you want to see what this classic JRPG series is all about, Phantasy Star 4 is the way to go. Moon is the JRPG that made me realise what a jerk I've been over the past 25 years of gaming. This PS1 exclusive was stuck in Japan until its Switch release in 2020, which is when most of us from the West first played the game. Now, Moon is known as an anti-RPG, and this is because you don't play the role of the traditional RPG hero. Instead, your job is to spread the love. The actual hero is this jerk who has no regard for the well-being of others, storming through townspeople, stealing from others' houses, and slaughtering monsters all around the world. You know, the kind of things that you do in every other JRPG out there. Yeah, I'm looking at you. In Moon, you're just a seemingly regular boy, and in order to return home, you'll need to collect love by helping out NPCs and reviving fallen creatures. This story is entertaining and hilarious, with a huge variety of quirky characters. When it comes to the gameplay, things are also a lot different to what you'd expect, such as the game having no battle system whatsoever. Moon instead plays out as more of a point-and-click adventure. There is an action limit gauge at the top, and this directly impacts what you're able to achieve in a day. This mechanic makes it so that you have to go into each day with a plan, as you can only achieve so much before time runs out. If you don't get back to bed in time, you are dead. When out exploring, it's up to you to solve the many puzzles around the world and help out as many NPCs as you can to obtain their love. Moon is not your typical RPG. This anti-RPG challenges those JRPG tropes that we've been experiencing for years. And as a result, we are presented with one unique, engaging, and at times hilarious ride. Moon knows exactly what it's trying to do, and it does it so well. Breath of Fire 5 Dragon Quarter is absolutely the black sheep of this beloved series. This game tore its fan base apart. Some absolutely loved what Dragon Quarter did, while others just couldn't seem to forgive its completely different direction and brutal mechanics. You remember those things you loved about the previous games? Yep, you're not going to see most of them this time around. So then, what is Dragon Quarter all about? A long time before the start of the game, humanity was forced to flee from the desolate surface to live underground. You play the role of Ryu, a low-level ranger who ends up rebelling against his government in order to save the life of Nina. She is a mysterious child who needs clean air to survive, something that the underground cannot provide. The majority of the story involves the struggles of Ryu, Nina, and Lin as they attempt to reach the world's surface so that Nina can live. Yep, the entire game is set underground without the freedom to explore the world, which is what this series was previously known for. With that said, Dragon Quarter does create amazing atmosphere down there with its cel-shaded graphics and dark, depressing environments highlighted by an awesome soundtrack. But this change in setting isn't the major factor that divided fans. It is the Soul system, which stands for Scenario Overlay System. This mechanic encouraging players to return to previous points of the game or even restart the game completely. Why would you want to do that, you ask? Great question. The Breath of Fire series is all about Ryu turning into a dragon and unleashing havoc on his enemies. This time around, he can still do that, except for the fact that if he does it too often, it will be game over and you'll have to start the game all over again. Every time Ryu transforms and unleashes a move in his dragon form, the counter at the top of the screen will go up. Once it reaches 100%, game over. The true challenge of Dragon Quarter is managing the dragon counter and only using it when you absolutely have to. If you don't know what you're doing, this game will be absolutely brutal. I have never experienced anything else like this, but I grew to really appreciate the balls that this game had to try new things and truly challenge me. Breath of Fire 5 Dragon Quarter is a very unique experience with some great ideas, even if it's just not really Breath of Fire-y. Bravely Default 2 is a follow-up to Bravely 2nd and Bravely Default 1. These games are highly acclaimed for their job systems and unique Brave and Default battle mechanics, which is something that I think all JRPG fans should experience. Bravely Default 2 is set on the continent of Excellent and follows the four main characters Seth, Gloria, Elvis and Adele, who embark on a quest to retrieve the stolen elemental crystals. But the story isn't the reason why you should play the game, it is the outstanding combat and job systems. Basically, you've got your typical turn-based system with your four characters up against some enemies. Your characters can attack, use items, or use an ability from their current job or sub-job. However, it's in the Brave and Default mechanics where this system truly shines. When selecting Default, the character will guard and obtain a Brave point, and you can accumulate up to 3 of these. These Brave points can then be used to perform an additional action. For instance, if the character has 3 Brave points, they can use all 3 for a total of 4 different actions in a single turn. You can also go into Brave Point debt if you use more BP than you currently have. This is a great way to maximize your output, but at the expense of not being able to act for a few turns. What I love about this is how well it works in the whole scheme of things, as there are many other factors that influence when you should or shouldn't use Brave and Default. There is always a lot to think about and so many ways to go about each battle, which is particularly true for the boss fights. Add to this the excellent job system, which provides so many possibilities and combinations in battle, and you have some incredibly addictive gameplay. This all makes Bravely Default 2 a must-play JRPG. From the moment Alliance Alive was announced, I knew it was going to be something special. The reason being that it was written by the late Yoshitaka Murayama, who was the genius behind the Suikoden and Eiyuden Chronicle series. It had been about 10 years since he worked on anything, which is why I was so excited to see him back in action. Alliance Alive is a retro-feeling JRPG set in a fantasy world where its 4 main regions are separated by oceans and a mysterious barrier. This barrier not only confines each region, but also creates some very abnormal weather conditions. The story begins by following the actions of Galil and Azura, 2 humans who are members of the human resistance. After a few hours, the focus shifts to other characters' points of views in other parts of the world, with all of these characters eventually crossing paths and teaming up to uncover the mysteries of the Great Barrier and to regain their rights. There is definitely a Suikoden feel with the writing, in that an unlikely bunch of heroes end up forming alliances and fighting against a more powerful enemy. This also extends to the gameplay, where you can recruit over 150 NPCs around the world and assign them to different guilds for a load of bonuses. The turn-based combat pits 5 of your possible 12 party members against a bunch of enemies. Much of the strategy in battle involves selecting which weapons to equip and which weapon arts to use. It is very simple but works surprisingly well. The same can be said about the unique upgrade mechanics where you're given a chance to learn or upgrade a skill or even to level up a character's HP or SP after battle. This chance is all based on complicated algorithms accounting for factors like enemy level, but I will say that this progression felt pretty good. Alliance Alive made me feel like I was playing a game from the 90s but in the modern day, and with all of the Suikoden-like additions, it is more than worthy of a spot in my top 100. After Star Ocean 5's abysmal reception, many fans felt that it spelt the end for this long-running sci-fi JRPG series. Fortunately, this wasn't the case, as in 2022, Star Ocean 6 The Divine Force was released. Star Ocean lived to see another day and was a strong bounce back for the series. The Divine Force takes place between Star Ocean 5 and Star Ocean 3 on the planet of Astra 4, and if you're new to the series, there is no requirement to have played the other games in the series, as Star Ocean 6 features a new world, new characters, and a new conflict. The game starts off with Raymond crashing down from the sky above and immediately makes it his mission to locate his companions. While on a mission of her own, Princess Letitia finds Raymond and the two end up teaming up together in the conflicts that come. Something that I really liked about the Divine Force's storytelling is its dual protagonist system. Star Ocean 6 returns to its Star Ocean 2 roots in the ability to choose the main protagonist, and while it doesn't impact the main story, it does change up a few scenes as well as characters that you can recruit. The Divine Force also features some pretty awesome exploration thanks to your little robot Duma, who allows you to zoom around the place, making vertical exploration possible. Like the exploration, the action-based combat also reaches a series high. Here, you can map various attacks to 3 of the face buttons on the controller, and performing these attacks consumes different amounts of AP which recharges when you're not attacking. The more AP you have means that you can perform longer combos, and there is a lot of variety here. Each character also plays so differently to one another, ensuring that the combat never gets stale. Star Ocean 6 is one of the strongest titles in the series, and if you're looking for a place to start, this is as good a place as any. Scarlet Nexus was a bit of a surprise packet for me when I played it back in 2021. Everything I'd seen about the game was looking good, but I was surprised how much I actually enjoyed it. The game is set in the future where a specific hormone was discovered in the human brain. This provided the vast majority of humans with a range of different powers from psychokinesis to invisibility. Sometime after this discovery, strange mutant creatures known as Others descended to the world from above, wreaking havoc on the planet. At the start of the game, you get a choice between 2 main characters, Yuito and Kasane. They are members of the Others Suppression Force and both possess psychokinetic powers. Now, I am a sucker for sci-fi stories with strange yet interesting concepts, and Scarlet Nexus did not disappoint. The narrative unfolds in a series of phases, with each being well paced and gradually building up to the climax. This story is one of the best things about the game. The action-based combat is the other standout feature, which places a focus on throwing things around the battlefield with your mind. This is something that you don't see every day. This concept of using psychokinesis in battle is enhanced by the haptic feedback and adaptive triggers provided by the PS5 controllers, and this feels great. Your success in battle will depend on how well you can create combos through mixing your regular attacks in with throwing objects at your enemies, and this is so much fun. Add all this to some breathtaking anime style visuals and you have yourself a very unique must-play action JRPG experience, which is well deserving of a top 100 spot on the list. Wild Arms 3 is the 3rd installment in this Wild West inspired series, which was at the peak of its popularity in the mid-90s to mid-2000s. This particular installment was really special to me and one that I'll hopefully be able to play again very soon. Wild Arms 3 follows the journey of 4 drifters, Virginia, Jet, Gallows and Clive, as they traverse the desolate world of Filgaia in hope of uncovering the secrets of ancient technology which could save the world from its impending doom. I've always been a huge fan of the Wild West theme here, with its motifs seamlessly woven into the story, art design and gameplay. This cel-shaded art looked great back then, and it's still a style that holds up today, which is more than you could say about many other games released in the early 2000s. Then there's the soundtrack, composed by Mashiko Naruke, which perfectly captures the essence of the Wild West. In regards to the battles, characters can use their accumulated force points to perform special abilities with their arms, which are essentially their unique guns. There's also a large emphasis on puzzle solving in dungeons, with the different characters having their own unique abilities to solve them. This is one of my favourite JRPGs when it comes to puzzle solving. Unfortunately, Wild Arms is yet another example of a series that seems to be dead in the water. With that said, some of the devs did successfully fund a Kickstarter project named Armed Fantasia, and this looks awesome. You should definitely keep your eyes open for this one in the coming years. I finally got to play Baton Kaitos back when it was remastered for the Switch last year. I mean, over the past 20 years, I just didn't stop hearing about this highly regarded GameCube JRPG and its unique combat system. Baton Kaitos is set within the floating continents. In the distant past, humanity were forced to migrate here from the uninhabitable toxic surface of the world. The game begins with the lead character Callus out on a journey for revenge. His goal is to avenge the death of his grandfather and younger brother who were killed by members of the Empire. While the protagonist of the game is Callus, you instead play the role of you. There is a really interesting dynamic here that I've never seen before. You are a guardian spirit who are beings that watch over the spiriters, who in this case is Callus. The story was really cool with some great twists and turns, but it's the widely praised combat which makes use of cards that is the real standout feature. Each character will be able to create a deck with a certain number of cards depending on their class. These cards should be made up of a mix of attack cards, defense cards, and items. In battle, you'll be able to choose from several randomly selected cards from your deck. Using the right ones at the right time is crucial in stringing together combos and defending against powerful attacks. What I loved about this system is that there's a mix between luck, preparation, and strategy. The tides of battle will constantly be shifting based on your current cards, and this was exceptional game design. Baton Kaitos is a cult classic for a reason, and easily one of my top 100 JRPGs of all time. Fire Emblem Engage is the latest title in Nintendo's flagship strategy RPG series. This series is best known for its addictive, tactical, turn-based grid battles, and that is exactly what Fire Emblem Engage has to offer. The game begins with the choice of a guy Alir or a girl Alir, both of which have absolutely wild visual designs. In fact, many of the characters have absolutely whack designs, and all of these years later, I still can't decide if this is a good thing or a bad thing. Now, Alir is the divine dragon, and after sleeping for 1,000 years, he wakes up to save the world from the evil Fell Dragon who had previously been sealed away. But the story or the characters are not the reasons why you would want to play Engage. To be honest, the game is a bit disappointing in this regard. Fire Emblem Engage deserves a spot on this list thanks to the strategic combat, which is better than it's ever been. At the start of each battle, you can select and position up to 12 characters on the battlefield. There are loads of characters from many different classes to choose from, with several optional recruits too. The core gameplay is just what you'd expect from a Fire Emblem game. Engage's major new addition to the battle system is Emblem Rings, and this is what gives it the edge over previous titles. By equipping an emblem ring to your character, you'll gain the power of past heroes. This includes stat increases, passive skills, unique weapons, and engage attacks, which can change the tide of battle. Now, these past heroes are actually characters from previous Fire Emblem games such as Ike, Marth, and Roy. Choosing which character to equip each ring to and when to use these engage skills and attacks in battle is where a lot of the strategy lies. Fire Emblem Engage may not be the best game in the series, but it is absolutely worth playing for its incredible tactical gameplay, making it more than worthy of a spot on the list. Lufia 2 Rise of the Sinistrals is a prequel to the original Lufia title and follows Maxim, a young monster hunter from the town of El Cid. This game has just about everything you'd expect from an old school retro JRPG with a few small additions that make it its own. The game is set 99 years before the events of the first and explains the origins of the war between mankind and a group of gods called the Sinistrals. The story begins when Maxim hears of a mysterious red light that has plunged into the sea. On his journey to investigate, he meets a woman named Iris who tells him that his destiny is to confront and defeat the Sinistrals. This story is a fairly stock standard save the world from an unknown evil kind of plot, but the adventure from start to finish is just so much fun. One of the standout features here is the heavy focus on puzzles within dungeons. Each dungeon has a plethora of puzzles that require the use of various tools such as arrows, bombs, and grappling hooks. While these are never too difficult to figure out, there are a load of hidden areas that give great rewards, so searching high and low will be worth your while. The simple battle system borrows from the already successful turn-based mechanics found in most games of the era. The first major consideration is the abilities granted by your current equipment. I really loved this as it requires some careful equipment management. You won't simply be equipping weapons and armor with the highest stats, as sometimes their associated abilities may not be as useful. The other unique mechanic is the inclusion of capsule monsters, and these little guys fight alongside you in battle. There are 7 of these monsters in total, but each can then be evolved into 5 additional forms. These monsters cannot be directly controlled like regular party members, but they do have their own sets of abilities that evolve as they do, making them very useful in battle. Lufia 2 is a title that doesn't seem to be talked about too often, but is definitely worth playing if you want to scratch that retro style itch. The 4th title in the Final Fantasy series, originally titled FF2 in the US, was first released in 1991 and since then has received loads of different versions and even a complete remake for the DS in 2007. Most recently, we've been treated to the Pixel Remaster version, which provides updated visuals, a re-recorded soundtrack, and loads of quality of life features, and this is the footage that you're seeing now. At the time of its release, Final Fantasy IV was met with critical acclaim, and many people still hold it as their favourite Final Fantasy game. So, what does it do so well? The major difference between FF4 and its predecessors is its focus on the story. Previously, we had some pretty basic narratives, and the characters that filled the world had very little depth. This all changed in Final Fantasy IV with its deeper story and memorable cast of characters. You play the role of the Dark Knight Cecil, captain of the Barren Kingdom's Red Wings. After the king orders him to travel to a town to steal the water crystal at the cost of innocent lives, Cecil begins to question the king's morality, and this is where the journey begins. FF4 is not a happy game. There is a lot of death and many emotional moments. Cecil has to deal with a lot, so much more than Fighter did in Final Fantasy I. There really are some great moments here, supported by an outstanding soundtrack, such as when you witness a village burn to the ground, or during some of Rosa and Cecil's emotional conversations with one another. The story is definitely one worth experiencing. The other significant upgrade from previous FF games is the introduction of the active time battle, which became a staple of the series and used in many future entries. Characters would now have to wait for their turn to come around, which can be seen on the gauge next to the character's name. Different actions also have different wait times. For example, physically attacking is instant, while casting a powerful spell may take several seconds. This sense of urgency added a whole new dynamic to battles and forced you to think ahead while your character is waiting for their turn. Final Fantasy IV raised the bar for the series in its focus on storytelling and evolution to the active time battles. They were revolutionary back then and still hold up today, which is why this game deserves a spot in my top 100. Back in 1994, Square released a little RPG on the Super Famicom called Live Alive. Unfortunately, the game was met with disappointing sales and never officially ventured out to the rest of the world. Until 2022 that is, when Live Alive was finally remade in that pretty HD 2D style that we all love. This game is a very different kind of RPG. It's basically a collection of 7 different short stories that range from around 30 minutes to 4 hours in length, each focusing on a different main character in a different time period. These stories all offer something unique with differing genres, structures, and gameplay mechanics, and after you complete them all, additional chapters will unlock to bring all of the characters together. To give you a taste, here's a rundown of the first 7 chapters. First, we have Edo, Japan, where you play as a shinobi sent to infiltrate the enemy stronghold and rescue a prisoner. The story is really light here with a focus on combat and exploration. Next, we have The Distant Future, which is essentially a story-driven space opera inspired by a bunch of different sci-fi films. The present day chapter is easily the shortest of them all and features Masaru Takahara and his journey to be the best fighter in the world. In the prehistoric era, you play the role of a caveman before language was ever a thing. This story unfolds through voiced grunts, sprite animations, and emotive symbols, and this was a really unique way to present the narrative. The Western chapter is another short but sweet story with some beautiful scenery. As you would expect, you play the role of a cowboy who soon gets caught up in a conflict between a small town and an outlaw gang. The gameplay here involves defending the town from an incoming attack. In the near future, we have Akira's chapter, and this one has it all. Storytelling, exploration, dungeon crawling, and grinding. And finally, we have Imperial China. Here, you play the role of a Shifu, who is an old martial arts master who has learned everything there is to know about his art. Now, his only desire is to find a student so his legacy can live on. Regardless of which chapter you choose, the combat's fundamentals will be the same. Your characters and the enemies are placed on a 7x7 grid, each with their own action gauge. This gauge will increase for both allies and enemies whenever you initiate movement around the field. If you stay completely still, nothing will happen. If you move around repetitively without attacking, the enemy will hit you many times, provided you're within their range. The strategy here is to be in the right spot at the right time, and this can be a lot of fun. Live Alive is a very simple yet solid RPG experience, and for what it sets out to do, it does a damn good job. There is truly something here for everyone. Super Mario, what a man. Since his first appearance in 1981's Donkey Kong, he has done it all. Soccer, golf, plumbing, racing, and believe it or not, even jumping. In 1996, our boy Mario thought it was about time to take a break from his usual pursuits, and with the help of the legendary RPG juggernaut Squaresoft, decided to save the world RPG style in Super Mario RPG Legend of the 7 Stars. This entry on the list is going to include the original game from 1996 and the Switch remake released in 2023. The game starts off with big bad busted up bully Bowser kidnapping Princess Toadstool with our heroic plumber risking his life to save her. Well, at least that's what happens at the start. It soon becomes apparent that there is an even bigger threat in the world, the Smithy Gang, who are dead set on world domination. It's up to Mario to collect the 7 stars and save the world once again. This story is simple and pretty much what you'd expect from a Mario game. Fun, light-hearted and fun, all the way through. It is short and sweet, with the full playthrough of the remake only taking around 12 hours. This is a little less than the original thanks to all of the quality of life improvements such as fast travel. Exploring the colourful world of Mario RPG is one of the most enjoyable parts of the game. I thought it was really cool how the world map replicates the Super Mario World style map, with each town or dungeon being accessible from there. Exploring each area contains a mix of both platforming and typical RPG elements. There are plenty of towns with shops, inns, and loads of NPCs to interact with. Super Mario RPG also features many different minigames. These are simple yet fun and range from Yoshi racing to falling down a waterfall. Something that has stuck with me all of these years is the turn-based combat system. It is very simple, but what Mario RPG does differently than most other RPGs released around the 90s is the addition of interactivity during attack and defense animations. If you time your button press correctly, you'll dish out more damage, while damage can also be reduced by timing a button press as an attack hits the character. This is a constant challenge due to most enemies' attacks being different, so naturally, learning the enemy's attack animations makes it much easier to defend. With that said, this is one of the easiest RPGs I've ever played in my life, so you could still easily get through the game without doing this. Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars has always been one of the best RPGs on the Super Nintendo, and both the original and the remake are absolutely worth playing today. To be completely honest, back in 2006, Final Fantasy XII was a game that I found really disappointing, especially after loving the previous entries so much. When the Zodiac Age remaster was released for the PS4 in 2017, I thought it was time to give it another go, and I'm happy to say that I enjoyed it a lot more the second time around. The game begins with a street rat named Van deciding it would be a wonderful plan to break into the Royal Palace during a big celebration and steal stuff. Following this string of surprising events, the majority of the story follows the princess who sets out to put an end to the war and bring her kingdom back to its former glory. And then there's Van, who just kinda tags along. To be honest, this story is something that has never really grabbed me, but that's okay because I had a blast with just about every other aspect of the game. For starters, the large open interconnected locations present a lot to explore and discover, and this was made even better with the removal of random encounters, which was a huge step forward for the series. The battles are also completely different to anything else previously seen in a Final Fantasy game. There is a huge shift to make the battles more action oriented and ultimately more seamless. You control one character at a time but can issue commands to your party if needed. When you're not directly controlling your party, they will act based on a list of previously set gambits, which is like a priority list that issues commands based on certain circumstances. This gambit system was such a great way to pre-program your party members, and even after all of these years, few games have done it as well. Then there's a license board system, which differs quite a bit between the original game and the Zodiac Age remaster. In the superior Zodiac Age version, each character can commit to 2 out of 12 jobs, each with their own unique license boards. There is a load of experimentation that can be done here. For instance, you could create a pure support mage by combining a white mage with a time mage, or you could have an offensive white mage that could hold their own in battle by crossing a white mage with a knight. Final Fantasy XII is far from the best Final Fantasy game, but it still has a lot going for it. If you haven't played it yet, definitely give the remaster a go. Who would have thought that we would ever see a crossover of the Shin Megami series and the Fire Emblem series? These two highly successful franchises are the favourites of millions of fans around the world, so developing a game that would please them all? Yeah, that would have been a difficult task. Fortunately, this game is awesome, though far from what you'd expect from a crossover between the two series. To be fair, the game is a lot more Shin Megami-like than Fire Emblem. The biggest Fire Emblem influence is the Mirage characters who confuse with the main cast in battle. Tokyo Mirage Sessions is set in modern Tokyo and tells a generic tale of overcoming a mysterious evil that's causing innocent people to vanish. To combat this threat, Itsuki and his companions travel the Idol Sphere, which is basically another dimension. That all sounds pretty stock standard, right? Well, throw in the Japanese idol scene and you have yourself one hell of a unique JRPG. I mean, you don't just start your journey, you debut. You do everything relating to pop stars and idols, and if this isn't your thing, well, hopefully you can just ignore it, because Tokyo Mirage Sessions is one hell of a fun ride. Let's take the pop star inspired battles for instance. Oh boy, they are so good. The key to victory is creating sessions with your other party members. To do this, you have to unleash an attack that exploits the enemy's weakness. If you don't exploit a weakness, you'll simply unleash a single attack. If you do attack the weakness, this single attack could potentially turn into a chain of 15 plus attacks that also provide a range of bonuses. So you can see the merit here. At the end of the day, yeah, you dance a lot, you sing a lot, but in the end, Tokyo Mirage Sessions is awesome, and I'm so glad it recently escaped Wii U jail and got a much deserved Switch remaster. The E series is one of the longest running JRPG series ever, spanning 10 main games and many other spin-offs since 1987. Ys 9 Monstrum Nox provides much of what was great about its predecessors, but throws a new spin on things with the game taking place in a single city. The story, once again, follows the journey of Adol in the prison city of Balduc. Immediately after entering the city, Adol is arrested due to his previous shenanigans and sent straight to the Slammer. During his breakout attempt, a mysterious hooded woman shoots him, turning Adol into a being known as a monstrum, and this is a huge focus of the entire game. The majority of the story involves uncovering the mysteries associated with the monstrums, but also the secrets and conspiracies involved in the prison itself. I thoroughly enjoyed Ys 9's story. There is constant mystery, many surprising reveals, and some awesome moments spread throughout this 50-hour journey. The action-based combat also feels really good. You can run, jump, and roll around with a single character, attacking your enemies with regular attacks. Each character can also equip 4 unique skills at a time, costing varying amounts of SP to use. The other 2 characters in your party can be switched on the fly, which is a good way to exploit enemy weaknesses, as each character's attack is classified as strike, pierce, or slash. The most significant unique addition to the combat is the use of gifts. Each monstrum has some sort of unique ability that can be used in battle, and once you officially recruit them, all characters can use these gifts. Adol's gift, for instance, allows the monstrums to quickly close in on the targeted enemy, while White Cat's ability allows them to climb up walls. When not in battle, you'll spend most of your time traveling around the city of Balduc and working through dungeons. This is made really fun because of these monstrums' gifts, which provide some sort of traversal ability, such as being able to glide or climb all around the giant city. Ys 9 is a solid entry to the series and definitely worth checking out if you're into the action RPG genre. Over the years, there really hasn't been that many moments in video games that have really stuck with me. Unless something is out of the ordinary incredible, I'll probably just forget about it. The introduction to Shadow Hearts is the complete opposite, and I can remember watching it for the first time like it was yesterday. This cinematic sequence features a mysterious man in a top hat firing demons across a train carriage at a young man who proceeds to capture one one-handed and brutally crush its small head in the palm of his hand, splattering blood everywhere. Over 20 years later, this remains one of my favourite opening sequences of all time, and it sets the atmosphere perfectly for what is one hell of a dark ride. The story begins 15 years after its prequel, Kudelka. After being told what to do by a mysterious voice in his head, Yuri proceeds to save a girl named Alice from that guy in a top hat. From here, it's a quest for answers, and much of the game will be focused on uncovering why Alice was kidnapped and the reason behind the mysterious voice. This is a short, relatively small adventure that rarely suffers from pointless diversions. It is also driven by one of my favourite characters of all time, Yuri Hyuga. He is an arrogant, blunt, badass with a heart of pure gold, and these imperfections make him so likable. He can also turn into demons, which would never be a bad thing when applying for the coolest protagonist ever position. Then there's the combat. It is your typical turn-based battle system, but with one genius addition, the Judgment Ring. Every time you select an attack, a circle appears with a set number of orange areas. As the clock hand spins around, you'll have to press X when it's over these hit areas. Miss one and the attack will completely fail. To take it a step further, these hit areas also have a really small red area at the end of them called strike areas. If you hit one of these, your attacks will do more damage. This is a risk-reward system at its best and makes every single encounter an absolute blast. Shadow Hearts is a dark, mature JRPG that wasn't afraid to run away from the pack and make itself unique, and I love it for this. Triangle Strategy is one of the stupidest video game names that I've ever heard, but what it lacks in its title, it makes up for in what really matters, being a good video game. Developed by Square Enix, Triangle Strategy is an SRPG with a combat system like Final Fantasy Tactics, a story like Game of Thrones, and an art style like Octopath Traveler. How could you go wrong with that combination? Triangle Strategy takes place on the continent of Norzelia 30 years after the Salt Iron War. This war was fought between three nations over the resources salt and iron. You play the role of Serenoa, a member of a high house of Glenbrook, and it doesn't take long for him to get caught up in a new political conflict between nations, all surrounding the trade and monopoly of salt. Triangle Strategy tells a highly engaging political story with some great moments, but I think the most impressive thing about it is the many paths that you can take. There are several key points in the game that require Serenoa to gather his allies to vote on which path they should take moving forward. This is all done through the scales of conviction. Your party members will have their thoughts on what should be done, but as their leader, Serenoa can sway them to a different vote. The decisions that you make are all very significant and will have a huge impact on future events, endings, story battles, and the characters that you can recruit. This scales of conviction system is so effective because I was so invested in the story, which made me really want to see how everything could unfold. But to see everything the game has to offer, you have to play through the story multiple times. When it comes to the gameplay, it is exactly what you'd expect from a strategy RPG, offering it little to set it apart from other titles. Despite the lack of innovation here, the combat is still a lot of fun and also a really good challenge. Also worth mentioning is that the game has just been released on the MetaQuest. I don't own this system, but I am really curious how it would go in VR. If you've given this version a go, let me know in the comments below. Tales of Grace's F was one of the first Tales games I played, and all these years later, it still remains one of my favourites. Just for a bit of context, Tales of Grace's was first released as a Japanese Wii exclusive and then ported to the PS3 under the title of Tales of Grace's F a couple of years later. But most recently, there is a full remaster for modern consoles set for a 2025 release which contains quality of life updates, all DLC, and new scenes previously unavailable outside of Japan. I cannot wait to experience the game all over again. The story of Grace's F begins in the past when the main characters are children. While this whole starting segment is often considered very slow and the weakest point of the game, just know that things get better from here and that these events are important in setting up for what's to come. The main character of the game is a red-headed hero named Asbel. Just as he's about to accomplish his dream of becoming a knight, his father's death forces him back to his hometown. Here, he gets caught up in the middle of a war, one which forces him to fight against King Richard, who was a friend back when they were children. I think my favourite thing about Grace's F is the combat, which is relatively easy to pick up but requires some extra skill if you want to challenge the harder difficulties. This action-based combat allows you to control one character at a time and run around the battlefield attacking and casting arts. The catch is, when you attack or run freely, you'll consume CC, and once this reaches 0, you have to wait a short time for it to recharge. This, of course, prevents button mashing and requires you to carefully plan your attacks. This system works surprisingly well, and my skills were truly challenged by several of the boss fights through the game. Then there's Titles, which is an excellent, highly rewarding RPG upgrade mechanic, a decent item combination system with a good balance of complexity, possibilities and reward, some solid exploration that encourages you to return to previous areas, and hundreds of typical Tales skits to teach you more about the world and your party members. Grace's F may not be the best Tales game in the series, but it is a damn good time and definitely one worth checking out. Next, we have a game that was not well received by fans at all, but now, 20 years later, I really feel that it's looked back on in higher regard. I'm talking about Final Fantasy X-2. Sure, it's not Final Fantasy X, but there is so much that I love about this game. FF10-2 is set years after the events of the original and follows Yuna, Riku, and Pain, who form a group called Charlie's Angels. Nope, they are known as the Gull Wings, and they travel across Spira in search of spheres that hold valuable information. One particular sphere just so happens to show a man who resembles Titus, and thus begins their new quest for answers. While the overall storytelling experience is not up to the high standard of the previous title, the game does have some standout standout moments, most notably these cinematics surrounding the vocal themes of 1000 words and real emotion. I must have played these scenes 100 times back when it was released, and there is so much nostalgia attached to these songs. Then there's a new direction that they took with Yuna. Summoner turned badass with pistols. I loved it so much. The true highlight of the game, however, is the incredible combat system, which is still one of my favorites. This time there is a shift from turn-based to an ATB system with the ability to interrupt enemies when they're preparing to attack. This is then taken to the next level with the dress sphere system, which acts as job classes. Each character can equip multiple dress spheres, each with their own unique abilities and skills. These can then be switched in battle, allowing the player to adapt to different situations. Love it or hate it, I have always held FF10-2 in higher regard, and I was so thankful to be able to jump into the world of Spira and see all my favourite characters just one more time. Now, how about that FF10-3 now, huh? Here's another FF for you, Final Fantasy V, also known as a Final Fantasy that gets no love. And why is that? Probably because it wasn't released in the US until 1999. This is a shame because this game is awesome and, if you ask me, horribly underrated. Like all the other early FF games, FF5 also has a load of different versions, with the Pixel Remaster version being the latest. The game begins with King Tycoon investigating the Wind Shrine after the wind stops blowing. Meanwhile, the game's protagonist, Bart, investigates a meteorite that has just smashed down into the surface. Here he finds an unconscious girl who happens to be a princess, and then an old man who lost his memory. Eventually they team up with a pirate named Ferris, and the four set out on a journey to protect the world's crystals from being destroyed. Honestly, I don't think the story is nearly as bad as people make it out to be. Yeah, it's simple and a little cliche, but there are some genuinely interesting moments with some emotional scenes sprinkled throughout, but for the most part, it's a fun, light-hearted journey. It is fun, which is probably the one word I would associate with the entire FF5 experience. The word fun is best highlighted with the job system. While FF3 was where the system originated for the series, FF5 was able to take it to an entirely new level, and this system is by far the strongest aspect of the game. There are loads of different jobs that unlock as the game progresses. Not only does each job provide a unique battle ability and equipment restrictions, but as you gain AP through combat, you'll also level up the character's current job. Leveling up a job will unlock new unique abilities that are either passive or for use in battle. Once learnt, these abilities can be equipped in the empty secondary slot of any job. Hell, if you want a dragoon who can sing songs, you can do it. If you want a dual weapon wielding white mage, there is nothing to stop you. This system is truly amazing and completely addictive. I was always so keen to discover what ability would be learnt next. Add this to some great exploration with loads of secrets to discover, and you have yourself a JRPG that is very difficult to put down. Any other FF5 fans out there? There's gotta be. Next up, we have one of the most highly regarded games of all time. I know many of you will be screaming at your screens, wondering why it's not in the top 10. It's just, I felt, that there are 66 better games out there. To start things off, one of my favourite things about Vagrant Story is its visual style. The game was released in 2000, which is relatively late in the PlayStation's lifespan, and the graphics here are truly impressive. This is particularly evident in the cutscenes, which feature fluid camera movements and angles and great character animations. It really feels like you're watching a movie. Add this to the dark gothic visual style and atmospheric music, and you have yourself one hell of an artistic experience. Now, Vagrant Story begins with the main character Ashley infiltrating the Duke's mansion to pursue a cult leader named Sydney and uncover his plans. While doing this, Ashley is drawn into a much deeper mystery involving ancient powers and his own past. This story is complex, full of twists and turns, plenty of mystery, and a load of thought-provoking, mature themes. This story is the prime reason why people hold this game so highly. But this complexity can also be seen in the combat, which blends real-time action with strategic elements. There is so much to get your head around here, including a detailed crafting system. Now, I will admit that I did spend a bit of time wondering why I was doing next to no damage in battle, but once I took the time to learn the ins and outs of combat and the crafting mechanics, I grew to really appreciate what Vagrant Story set out to do. Long story short, Vagrant Story is not for the casual gamer, and I really feel that to get the most out of the game, it should be played multiple times. I am including Lunar Silver Star Story and Lunar 2 Eternal Blue as the same entry because I love them both nearly equally, and I feel that they both create a similar classic feel-good adventure. With that said, I do think that Eternal Blue was the better out of the two, but it's not a competition, right? If there are two words that I could use to sum up these two classic JRPGs, it would be charming and timeless. Both of these classics are the epitome of feel-good JRPG adventures. The first in the series, Silver Star Story, focuses around Alex, a young boy from a small village who hopes to one day be like his hero, the legendary Dragon Master Dyne. After travelling to a nearby cave with his childhood friends Luna and Ramus and his flying white cat, the group comes across the dragon Quark, who beckons Alex to travel the world to become the new Dragon Master. Lunar 2 Eternal Blue begins with Hero and his flying pink cat companion Ruby, discovering an ancient tower and meeting Lucia, a mysterious girl from the Blue Star. She has come to the world to stop the return of an evil being known as Zophar, and this is the start of one hell of an awesome journey. One of the things that I love most about these games is the relationships that each of the characters have with one another. There is plenty of love, a little bit of distrust, and an absolute smorgasbord of playful teasing, such as Nal, who is constantly burning Ramus with hilarious and probably quite inappropriate comments. The combat mechanics for both of these games are very similar. Both feature a simple turn-based combat system with basic attacks, magic, and unique character abilities. The rest of the gameplay feels exactly what you'd expect from a game of the era, but few other games are able to present a journey so charming with such a great cast of characters. I know there are many people out there who haven't played these games yet, which is why the upcoming remasters are a must-play if anything here interests you. Next up, we have a title that people never really seem to talk about. Arc the Lad Twilight of the Spirits is the fourth installment in this tactical JRPG series and also my favourite. Released in 2002 for the PS2, Twilight of the Spirits follows two races, the humans and the Deimos, who have been engaged in conflicts for centuries regarding the use of magical spirit stones. The humans use them to power the machinery, while the Deimos use them as their life force. I think my favourite thing about this game is how the story unfolds through two different points of view. First, we have the human Karg, who sets out to uncover the mysteries of his past and to find his long-lost brother. Then there's Dark, a Deimos who has suffered great hardships and seeks to gain power to protect his people. Learning about these characters, their motives, and seeing how their journeys intersect makes for one hell of an engaging story. The other standout feature here is the tactical combat. Unlike the traditional grid-based movement seen in the original Arc the Lad trilogy, Twilight of the Spirits uses a circular movement system, allowing characters to move freely around the battlefield. You can eventually bring up to 6 different characters into each battle, and effectively moving them around to take advantage of the unique abilities and attack ranges is a key consideration of this tactical combat. Unfortunately, aside from a release on the PS4 PlayStation Store, Twilight of the Spirits is still stuck on the PS2. I would love this game to get a remaster so more people could enjoy it. Actually, any sort of series revival that isn't a mobile gacha game would be really nice. Oh look! Here's another Final Fantasy game on the list that falls under the mediocre fan reception at launch but has grown on people over the years. Personally, this is one that I enjoyed from the very start. This entry features the entire FF13 trilogy, which consists of the original game, FF13-2, and Lightning Returns. Let's start at the start. FF13 follows Lightning and her companions as they are branded as l'Cie. l'Cie are basically individuals chosen by powerful godlike beings called fal'Cie to carry out specific missions known as Focus. Failing to complete these missions will turn l'Cie into monsters, so they kinda need to do as they're told. I thought the setting and this story was really awesome, and this was driven by a great cast of characters, especially Sars, who has some really memorable moments. This sets a great foundation for its sequel, which takes place 3 years after, with the main character being Lightning's sister Sarah. Here, the focus is on time travel and changing the future. Other important characters from the previous game also play a role in the story, and seeing what became of them all was really interesting. This trilogy then concludes with Lightning Returns, where we once again take control of Lightning. This one is set 500 years in the future, with the world on the brink of destruction. Lightning is tasked by the goddess to save as many souls as possible before the world ends. However, during this time, Lightning begins to learn the truth behind the world's fate and the goddess's true agenda. All of these games have very different styles of storytelling and progression, and these all complement each other very well. The same can be said about the different combat systems. FF13 features an ATB system which focuses on staggering enemies and actively switching paradigms to adapt to different battle situations. FF13-2 builds on this and adds the ability to recruit monsters to fight alongside you in battle. In Lightning Returns, our hero fights alone but can alternate between 3 different skill sets called schemas. Each schema has its own ATB, meaning that you'll constantly be switching between all 3, inputting commands as you traditionally would with separate party members. The trilogy of FF13 has a lot to offer. I will absolutely be jumping in again when it's inevitably remastered on modern consoles. Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes. This one means a lot to me, as it's a spiritual successor to the Suikoden series, which is probably the series that influenced me the most growing up. Eiyuden Chronicle is designed to recapture the love that we all had for the Suikoden series, and this is mainly done through reusing and building on all of the mechanics that made the series so special. The game is set in the region of All-Around, with a story that revolves around rune lenses, which are magical objects that provide various benefits for its users. The game begins with Noah from the League of Nations teaming up with Sane from the Galdian Empire on a joint expedition to hunt down one of the primal lenses. The traditional Suikoden formula is here. Noah finds himself playing a key role in the war, starting off with a small resistance army with seemingly no hope of winning. Then he gains a HQ, gains allies, and expands his army into one capable of taking on the mighty Empire. Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes is called 100 Heroes for a reason. You can recruit over 100 characters to fight for your cause. Finding them, recruiting them, then seeing what they add to your massive headquarters was a lot of fun. There are some really quirky characters to recruit too, like Francesca, who seems like a shy, timid young lady until someone pisses her off. Her lines in battle are just hilarious. Then you've got your other Suikoden staples like the 6-person combat system with combination attacks, 1 vs 1 duels, and a large-scale war battle system. Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes is the game for Suikoden fans. If that's you, then I could not recommend this game enough. I'm just hoping that this is the start of something bigger. If you ask me, Kingdom Hearts has gone down in history as the most significant, surprising franchise crossover in the history of video games. It's like one of those where were you moments. Where were you when you first heard about our favourite JRPG developer forming an unlikely partnership with the guys who made our early childhood so special? One thing's for sure, any skepticism that I had about this odd collaboration between Squaresoft and Disney was washed away within the first couple hours of gameplay. At that point, I just knew that Kingdom Hearts was going to be something special. The game begins on the Destiny Islands, where childhood friends Sora, Riku and Kairi are making the most of their simple lives but dreaming much bigger. They want to leave the island and explore new worlds. The trio finally get this chance when a bunch of mysterious dark creatures attack the island, dispersing the characters all over the place. From here, we follow Sora's quest to travel the worlds, rescue his friends, and to defeat the darkness. The worlds that he visits, of course, are those from our favourite childhood movies such as Hercules, Tarzan and Beauty and the Beast. I was a Disney kid and experiencing these worlds once again in Kingdom Hearts was something just so incredible. Then there's the fact that the game is also filled with my favourite Final Fantasy characters, which was my current obsession at the time. Seeing characters like Cloud, Squall, Aeris and Sephiroth was just the icing on the cake. When it comes to the combat, Kingdom Hearts takes a step away from the turn-based system most Square fans had grown used to. The player controls Sora, who can run around the battlefield attacking with his Keyblade and casting the occasional spell. He can also summon other Disney characters to fight alongside him, which was a really nice touch. Sora's two other party members, who are usually Donald and Goofy, act based on some pretty simple AI patterns. There's just something so nostalgic about hearing Donald and Goofy's voice lines while in battle. This was Kingdom Hearts when it was simple. This was Kingdom Hearts before you had to play a dozen other games to have any idea what the hell was going on. And this was Kingdom Hearts nearly at its best. Persona 3 is a bit of a unique game for the list because it has many different versions offering no clear definitive way to play the game. There is the original Persona 3 released way back in 2006 on the PS2. There's the enhanced Persona 3 FES, which offers an extra 30 hours of gameplay. There's Persona 3 Portable and its remaster, which provides the ability to control your party members at the expense of quite a lot of cut content and alterations. Finally, there's a complete remake, which is probably the best of the lot, but because I haven't played much of it, this entry is going to focus on the Portable remaster. Now, the Persona 3 experience can be split into two. For half of the game, you'll be playing through a life simulator set in a fictional Japanese town. During the other half, you'll be dungeon crawling through a massive tower called Tartarus, which exceeds 250 randomly generated floors. You play the role of a student who has just been transferred from another school. Upon arriving in his dorm, he encounters a mysterious boy, and this makes it very clear that this isn't going to be a normal school year. You see, every day at midnight, a 25th hidden hour takes place, known as the Dark Hour. During this time, regular people are transformed into coffins and remember nothing of the event. Persona users like yourself, however, are awake during the Dark Hour, and exploring its mysteries is the driving element of the story. Persona 3's story is really good. The cast of characters that join you are all unique and likeable, and the excellent voice acting really brings them to life. Like the other recent Persona games, you'll need to choose how to spend each day by spending time with your friends to build social links, partaking in activities to increase your social stats, or exploring the seemingly never-ending dungeon that is Tartarus. Each of the 264 floors here are randomly generated, meaning the layout, the treasures, and the shadows that you'll encounter will change every time. When you enter battle, you can expect the typical SMT press turnstile combat where exploiting weaknesses will provide an extra turn. This combat is a lot of fun and creates some great strategic boss fights. If you want a JRPG with a great story and cast of characters, plus an emphasis on social mechanics and dungeon crawling, Persona 3 will tick all of the boxes. At number 60, we have the latest title in the long-running Megami Tensei series, Shin Megami Tensei 5. This is a game for the more serious JRPG enthusiast, as there are some pretty complex RPG mechanics and brutal difficulty. SMT5 begins in Tokyo. The main characters are high school students who are drawn into investigating rumors about the appearance of demons in a nearby tunnel. While investigating, an earthquake hits the city and the main character finds himself in the netherworld. This is a post-apocalyptic version of Tokyo where demons and angels are at war. While here, the protagonist fuses with a powerful being known as a Nahabino. What kind of name is that, you ask? The name of a badass half-demon. That's what. This core story revolves around the war between the demons and the angels and saving Tokyo from an uncertain future. While this narrative is clearly serviceable, it is the gameplay that makes SMT5 worthy of a spot in my top 100. As you would expect, the combat uses a press turn system where landing critical hits or exploiting weaknesses will land you an extra turn, while missing will cause you to lose a turn. Just believe me when I say that missing the enemy can ruin your day by resulting in a game over. The same can be said about an enemy mob receiving the first strike, which can decimate you in an instant. Yep, this combat can be brutal, and unless you know what you're doing every single step of the way, you can expect to see that pretty little game over screen again and again. But don't let that put you off, as the system is really great and creates some exceptionally intense boss battles. Then there's the whole demon catching aspect, which is done through negotiating with the many demons inhabiting the world and by fusing them together. This monster fusion system is absolutely sensational. There is an insane amount of different demons, and the tools that you're given to customize them to your liking is truly commendable. The strategic, challenging turn-based combat and outstanding RPG mechanics created through the demon fusing makes SMT5 a must-play for experienced JRPG gamers. Next up, we have Grandia 2, which is my favourite one in the series. Originally released in 2000 for the Dreamcast, then the PS2 and PC a couple years later, it has most recently been remastered for modern consoles, making it very accessible for anyone that wants to experience this classic. The story follows the mercenary Ryudo, who takes on a seemingly simple job to escort a songstress to a religious ceremony. However, that quickly spirals into a grand adventure when they discover that the ceremony is to seal away an ancient evil god named Velmar. Grandia 2's story is a lot of fun, and for me, it feels exactly like a JRPG journey should. Ryudo is also accompanied by a memorable cast of characters, such as the impatient, hot-tempered Millennia, who is my personal favourite. But while the story makes the game worth playing, it is the combat that makes this game worth loving. This highly regarded battle system combines elements of real-time and turn-based gameplay to create highly strategic and addictive encounters. Essentially, you have a gauge down the bottom of the screen which acts as a timeline showing the order in which characters and enemies will act. Each character's icon will actively move across the weight portion of the gauge until it hits command, which is when you can input an action. Different actions then have different act times, which is displayed to the right of the gauge. A key strategic element of this system is the ability to manipulate enemy actions. By timing attacks correctly, you can interrupt the enemy, forcing them back on the gauge. Managing your character's actions and choosing the right moves to best suit the current state of the gauge is so much fun, and makes this system one of my favourite JRPG battle systems of all time. Unfortunately, we haven't had a mainline Grandia entry since 2005, but like I said before, at least we have the remasters if we want to relive the magic. Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core was always one of my favourite games on the PSP, and after replaying the recent remaster titled Crisis Core Reunion, I fell in love with it all over again. The original FF7 is an amazing game with an outstanding cast of characters, and Crisis Core is a love letter to fans of OG FF7. If you're out of the loop, Crisis Core begins 7 years before the events of FF7 and follows the journey of Zack Fair. He is a member of Soldier and played a small yet extremely important part of the original game. Seriously, Crisis Core has some of my favourite moments in the entire FF7 compilation. The highs, such as the breathtaking cinematics and the ending, are really high. I, like many other people here, played FF7 first, and I always find it incredible how impactful and emotional the ending of Crisis Core is, despite knowing what's going to happen. Crisis Core Reunion also sees some slight changes to the original PSP gameplay, and this goes a long way in making it the definitive version of the game. In combat, Zack can run around the battlefield, attacking, dodging, and blocking. You can also set 6 materia to use in combat, and the magic or command materia can be unleashed instantly given that you have enough MP or AP. Then there's the digital mind wave feature, which is a completely random mechanic. These spinning reels provides buffs and access to limit breaks and summons, and this can be the difference between life and death. Aside from this, you have a decent materia upgrade system that allows you to fuse 2 existing materia together to create brand new materia. With the recent resurgence of the FF7 series through the remakes, it's an absolute no-brainer to play Crisis Core as well. Zack's story is definitely one worth experiencing. The last story is the 7th title created by Mistwalker, which of course means that FF creator Hironobu Sakaguchi played a key role in its development. I will always associate this title with Operation Rainfall, which was a fan campaign designed to persuade Nintendo to release Xenoblade Chronicles, Pandora's Tower, and The Last Story in North America. All 3 of these JRPGs were eventually localized for North America, and while Nintendo had never outright stated that Operation Rainfall was the reason for this, it is probable that the immense support for the campaign did have some influence. Now, the Wii wasn't a very powerful console, but The Last Story is absolutely one of the best looking games on the system. Then there's the outstanding soundtrack from Sakaguchi's partner in crime, Nobuo Uematsu. When you've got these 2 legends working together, it's hard not to hit gold. The story follows a group of mercenaries, including the protagonist Zale, who dreams of becoming a knight. Early in the game, Zale receives the mystical Mark of the Outsider, which grants him unique powers in battle. Then, after crossing paths with a noble woman named Callista, the 2 become involved in an ongoing war between humans and the beast-like Gurak. As the title suggests, The Last Story is a very story-focused game, and I really enjoyed it. Most of the story unfolds through loads of quality cinematics, with all of these scenes being fully voiced. Then there's the combat. At first glance, this looks like your typical action RPG with attacking, blocking, and dodging, but it is far from it. It's more of an action tactical hybrid, as a lot of the time you don't want to be directly attacking. You see, Zale has the ability to draw enemies' attention away from everyone else, and you'll need to use this at the right time to keep everyone alive and to maximize your offensive output. The boss fights in particular require a lot of strategy, with a lot of them having their own gimmick, and these were the highlights of the battle system for me. As of 2025, The Last Story is unfortunately still stuck in Wii jail, but I've got a feeling that it's only a matter of time before we see its inevitable remaster. Next up, we have the title that truly popularized the monster catching genre worldwide. It is, of course, Pokemon, but which one should I put here? If you ask me, they're all pretty much the same, offering a very similar experience, but if we want specifics, I'm going OG with Red and Blue. I had my first encounter with Pokemon Red on Christmas Day, all the way back in 1998. One of my friends bought his Game Boy a new Pokemon game over to show me, and it was love at first sight. Being able to capture and fight with all of the Pokemon I knew and loved from my morning cartoons on TV ritual was special. I wanted a Game Boy, and I wanted one now. Unfortunately, my first playthrough would have to wait a while, but when I did finally get to dig into it myself, I was hooked. The enjoyment of playing Pokemon for the first time cannot be replicated for me. Starting out as a new trainer, choosing a starter Pokemon, and traveling the lands to be the very best that no one ever was an experience like no other. And while this series arguably did get better over time, there are a few reasons why Red and Blue specifically got the spot. Firstly, it was my first, and there's something special about that. Secondly, I knew all of the Pokemon at that point. I mean, I used to study all 151 and knew them all by name. Pokemon Red and Blue was also a challenge for me back then, which is something that I haven't seen in recent entries in the series. For the significant impact that the game had on the genre and the fun it brought 11-year-old me, Pokemon Red and Blue does more than enough to earn a spot in my top 100. Visions of Mana is the 5th and most recent main title in the Mana series, and the first since Dawn of Mana was released all the way back in 2006. If you grew up with the series, you will feel right at home here, as Visions of Mana looks and feels exactly like a modern Mana game should. The very first thing that stood out for me here was the breathtaking visuals. Visions of Mana is one of the best looking games that I've played, and exploring these bright, vibrant, colourful environments was a treat. The game follows the journey of a young soul guard named Val, who sets out on a pilgrimage to escort a group of alms to the Mana Tree. It is the duty of these chosen alms to sacrifice their lives to the Mana Tree in order to renew the flow of mana in the world. So basically, a bunch of people die so the world can live. To be honest, it's not the story or the characters that earned this game a spot on the list. It is the exploration, the combat, and the class system, all of which were done exceptionally well. In battle, you control one character at a time with the ability to switch to your other 2 party members on the fly. Each character can then string together combos using basic and special attacks, and also cast spells and super powerful class strikes. It sounds pretty simple, because it is, but I enjoyed every second of hammering my foes and taking on the many bosses. This is mainly due to elemental vessels, which provide your party with a unique ability that works on a cooldown. These also dictate the class of each character, and this provides loads of different playstyles. I thoroughly enjoyed mixing up different party members and their classes and finding combinations that worked really well together. It didn't take me long to realise that Visions of Mana was my favourite game in the series, and if you're after a stunning JRPG with solid exploration, fun combat, and a great class system, then Visions of Mana should not be missed. Folklore is a title that has flown under the radar for a lot of gamers. Developed by the now non-existent Game Republic and released exclusively for the PlayStation 3 in 2007, it seems to have been overshadowed by a load of other huge releases of the time. I played Folklore for the first time back when it was released, and there are a few things about it that really make this game special. Most notably is the engaging story, the dark atmospheric art design, and the mythological fairy tale setting, which is something that you certainly don't see too often. The story starts with the detective, Keats, receiving a phone call from a distraught woman pleading for help. Curiosity gets the best of him, and just like any detective would, he travels to the village of Dulan in hope of a career-changing news story. At the same time, a young woman, Ellen, is contacted by her mother, who she hasn't seen for 17 years. Shocked by this, she too packs her bags and heads to Dulan. Upon arrival, these 2 protagonists cross paths, only to witness a lady sitting on the edge of the cliff, who then falls to her death into the ocean below. While this is a serious murder mystery story with loads of twists and turns that takes place in the real world, there's also another story that runs parallel in the fantasy world called the Netherworld. Here, Ellen and Keats are able to summon mystical creatures called folks to fight for them in battle. Each folk ability is assigned to a face button on the controller, and traveling the different realms, catching the 100 plus folks, and customizing your folk party for battle is a load of fun. Folklore may not be the biggest name in the world of JRPGs, but it is definitely one worth checking out for its quality narrative, beautiful art design, and interesting mythological setting. This makes it more than worthy of a spot on my list. Final Fantasy XV was the FF game we waited forever for. First announced as FF Versus 13 in 2006, it was eventually rebranded and released a decade later to very mixed reviews. While initially a bit rough around the edges, I did have a lot of fun with this one and really want to go back once again and experience the entire FF15 universe all at once. This includes the Kingsglaive film, the anime, the novel, and the many DLCs. FF15 begins with Prince Noctis and his 3 companions heading to the city of Alticia, where Noctis' wedding with Lunafreya is set to take place. While on this commute, the Niflheim Empire murders the king, who is Noctis' father, and takes control of the kingdom. Noctis is not the kind of guy who would let something like this slide, so he sets out to put an end to the Niflheim Empire and reclaim his throne. Personally, I thought the story had some amazing moments, some feeling absolutely epic, while others that really hit you in the feels. And while the base game story is definitely on the shorter side with quite a few plot holes, a lot of it is fleshed out with the novel and the 4 DLCs, each focusing on one of the main characters. On that note, I think the main cast is my favourite thing about the game. FF15 only has 3 party members that accompany Noctis, and they are his best friends who grew up with Noctis during his childhood. It really feels like a brotherhood, with the boys just hanging out, cruising in the convertible, and of course saving the world. The combat takes a completely different direction to past FF games in this action focus, and there are some good ideas here. You take control of Noctis and can equip 4 weapons or spells at a time. A unique mechanic here is that Noctis can use MP to warp to an enemy and warp away in an instant. Other than that, we have a large open region to explore with loads to do, some epic cutscenes, and loads of little details and references to past FF games that consistently made me smile. If you want to experience the best of this Final Fantasy, make sure you play the Royal Edition of the game and then download the final DLC, Episode Arden. Over the past few years, the Trails series has become a hot topic for JRPG fans, with its many interconnected titles that, to put bluntly, are all amazing. Trails Through Daybreak is the newest installment in Falcom's massive JRPG series, but it's set in an entirely new location and features a brand new cast of main characters, and this excited me so much. This also makes Daybreak a great entry point for Trails newcomers who have always wanted to get into the series. Daybreak is set in Kelvard, a large country located east of Erebonia from the Cold Steel games. The main character, Van, is a Spriggan who takes on semi-shady jobs when clients don't want the bracers or the police involved. At the start of the game, Van is approached by a high school student who needs his help to find a family artifact known as a Genesis. This is the start of a long and epic journey, as just about everything following the mission revolves around other Genesis artifacts and the powers and mysteries that they hold. This storytelling is exactly what you'd expect from a Trails game. It's the slow burner with loads of world building and character development, and this all pays off when the major moments hit, which are nothing short of epic. Then there's the hybrid combat, which takes a significant step forward from the rest of the series. The big new feature here is the ability to attack enemies in an action combat style. This not only gives you an advantage before entering the turn-based battles, but it also makes rolling through weaker enemies so quick and easy, as well as providing a quicker way to build up your character's CP. The turn-based combat still retains the traditional Trails mechanics such as arts, crafts, and S-crafts, but with several significant additions that makes it the best combat that the series has seen. This evolution feels familiar, but does the perfect amount to evolve it to the next level. Daybreak's great story, strong cast of characters, outstanding soundtrack, and incredible hybrid combat system makes it my favourite debut title of all of the Trails arcs, and I can't wait to see what happens next in Daybreak 2. The Xeno series is right up there with my favourite JRPG series of all time, and I don't think I can name another series with such a consistently high quality of titles. Xenoblade Chronicles X was originally released for the Wii U in 2015, and for the last decade has remained the only reason why I keep my Wii U plugged in. This, of course, all changed when the full remaster was announced for the Switch, and I cannot wait to jump into my scales and explore the beautiful world once again. Yep, Xenoblade Chronicles X takes a bit of a different approach to every other game in the series. Where Geras Saga and the other Blade titles have a core focus on storytelling and character development, the best thing about Chronicles X is the exploration. The amount of detail and the sheer scope of the lands is second to none, and exploring every inch was always my number one priority. Everything that you see in the distance can be reached. You want to climb that massive mountain over there? You can do that. This is what every open world game aspires to be. But that's not to say there isn't a story. It all started back on Earth, which was a happy place. This was until 2 unknown alien races decided to battle it out in nearby space, which ends up completely destroying the planet. Fortunately, a transport vessel known as the White Whale escapes. This vessel spends the next couple of years looking for a new home until it's shot down, causing it to crash into an unknown planet. From here, it's a quest for survival in an unknown land. This is a really cool premise and fits in with the exploration and discovery focus of the game. While exploring, you can take your party out on foot, but the true magic happens when you acquire your skills, which are like your mechs. This also means that there's two variations of combat. On foot, you take control of one character with basic attacks being unleashed automatically. The strategy comes in selecting arts at the right time. There are loads of arts to learn from over 16 classes. Then there's the scale battles, which are required to take on the biggest, most deadly creatures around Mira. You can attach up to 9 weapons into these things, each with their own associated art. It was so good returning to those giant monsters that kicked your ass in the past and completely wiping the floor with them. If you were like most people in the world and didn't own a Wii U, you have something to look forward to with the Switch remaster. Do not miss out on this one. At number 50, we have a serious fan favourite. Skies of Arcadia was originally released in the year 2000 on the Dreamcast and then a few years later on the GameCube. And despite being on countless gamers' top RPGs ever lists, it has never seen a re-release. However, Sega just filed a new trademark for the name, so hopefully we're going to hear something positive very soon. As you would expect from a game named Skies of Arcadia, the game takes place in the skies of a place called Arcadia. Perhaps the most interesting thing about the game is the unique setting. The entire game is set around 6 civilizations that are located on several floating continents. You play the role of Vice, a young sky pirate, and the majority of the game involves fighting the evil Valuan Empire who are attempting to take over the other continents. Then you throw in the mysterious Fina, who is on an unknown secret quest of her own, and this story is suddenly given a load of depth, twists, turns, and mystery. You know those moments from your favourite childhood RPGs, the ones that just made you smile? This is the feeling I had with Skies of Arcadia. This journey is one worth experiencing. For a game set in the sky, you would expect a large focus on airships, and that is exactly what Skies of Arcadia delivers. You will do a lot of travelling in various airships, but better yet, they play a huge role in the plot as giant airship battles are a huge focus of the game. The world, or should I say the skies, have loads of towns and dungeons to explore with plenty of potential crew members that can be recruited to your cause. Each of these characters provides some sort of benefit, such as additional abilities for your ship in battle or the ability to forge weapons. The turn-based battles are pretty much what you'd expect from the genre, with the SP system being the standout mechanic. Each turn, your party will build up a shared amount of spirit points, and these are required to unleash powerful moves and magic. Do I use a mid-powered attack this round or save my points for a high-powered attack next round? Managing these points is where the strategy comes into play and creates some very fun battles. Skies of Arcadia is absolutely worthy of both its critical acclaim and a spot in my top 100. It takes something special, something different about an indie RPG to get me excited, and Flowstone Saga did just that. This RPG is exactly what you'd get if you crossed a quality 16-bit retro JRPG with the world's best-selling video game, Tetris. Personally, I've never really been a Tetris fan, but now I am a Tetris fan. Actually, I'm a Flowstone Saga fan, and a huge one at that. The story follows the journey of Mirai, a young woman who wakes up on the mysterious oceans and islands with no memory of her past. Early in the game, Mirai stumbles into an ancient rune and finds a mysterious item known as a Flowstone. This allows her to modify existing structures and fight, Tetris style. From what initially starts off as a pretty light-hearted fun adventure, soon takes a turn when a bunch of pirates sail to the islands, and this sparks a load of mysteries and conflicts for Mirai and her friends. The story and the characters get the thumbs up, and the mix of light-hearted fun with heavier scenes were very well balanced. And then you have the combat. Wowee! At the start of each battle, you'll be presented with a Tetris-style battlefield. You'll need to clear lines to inflict damage to your enemies. The bigger the clears or the more lines you complete in a row, the more the damage. This alone is a lot of fun, but Flowstone goes absolutely all out with additional mechanics, such as special tiles and mana abilities to ensure you always have a lot to think about. Aside from providing one of the most unique, addictive combat systems I've ever experienced, Flowstone Saga also includes everything else you'd expect from a quality JRPG. Incredible 16-bit retro-style visuals, a soundtrack absolutely jam-packed full of bangers, loads of customization options that allow you to create many different playstyles, and as I mentioned before, a story and cast of characters that'll keep you playing until the credits roll. It's not too often that I find an indie RPG that is just so surprisingly good. Even though I'm not a Tetris guy, this game was absolutely my jam and is one that everyone should check out as soon as possible. Tales of Xillia will always be special to me, as it was the first Tales game I ever played, and it also encouraged me to play as many games as I could in the series. It was a great way to start my Tales journey, and to this day it's still among my favourites in the series. Xillia's story follows Jude, a young aspiring medical student who becomes curious when his professor mysteriously disappears. Jude decides to investigate a military facility for answers, and by investigate, I mean break into. On his way, he encounters a mysterious girl named Mila who has her own reasons for investigating the building, to destroy a weapon of mass destruction. From here, we have one epic adventure full of twists, turns, and surprises. Most of the time when RPG characters say, "We've come so far," they really haven't, but by the end of Xillia, it really does seem like the epic journey that it's meant to be. At the start of the game, you can choose between Jude or Mila, and this will have a slight impact on the narrative in terms of the scenes that you can view. To complement this addictive narrative, Xillia also has quite a superb bunch of characters, with many of his strong cast sticking with me all these years later. Then you've got your action combat battle system, which is fast, stacked with different mechanics, and best of all, a load of fun. It's also very difficult to master, even by the end of the game. This combat also makes the game incredibly replayable, with each of the 6 characters having their own unique special ability that will greatly alter the playing experience. Jude, for instance, is able to pivot around his enemies if it dodges timed correctly, while Elvin is able to charge his weapon for greater attack power. Due to the complexities of each character's button combinations and unique mechanics, I recommend sticking with one character per playthrough. If you ask me, Tales of Xillia ticks all the boxes and is a quality action JRPG that everyone should play. There's also a sequel which is pretty damn good too. Next up, we have Star Ocean 2: The Second Story Remake. The original PS1 release was a great game in its own right, but this entry is going to focus on the recent remake, which was an outstanding remake and improves on the original in every way. The one thing that I can say I loved most about Star Ocean 2 is the story. In fact, it's actually my favourite in the series. Star Ocean's second story takes place 20 years after the first title. This time, we have 2 main protagonists that can be selected at the start of the game, and this will provide a few unique events throughout the story. First, we have Rena, a young girl living on the planet of Expel. Then there's Claude, an Earthling who is accidentally teleported to Rena's planet. The two soon set out to investigate a meteorite that crashed down on the planet, causing monsters to appear and other natural disasters to occur. I thoroughly enjoyed the story the first time around and liked it even more the second time. Everything that the remake offers made the story delivery just that much better. In battle, you run around the battlefield controlling one character at a time but can switch between all 4 on the fly. Your basic controls include stringing together a basic combo of normal attacks or using one of 2 currently equipped battle skills. Enemies also have a break meter, which is represented by 4 shields above the enemy. When broken, you'll be able to dish out a load more damage without being attacked. The alterations made in this remake were crucial in turning the spammy, frustrating combat system of the original into something that was thoroughly enjoyable. Star Ocean 2: The Second Story Remake is one of the best remakes I have ever played. The original game had its strengths, but also plenty of issues, and the devs knew exactly what they needed to do to reimagine the game and make it the best it could possibly be. And this is why this remake makes it into my top 100 JRPGs of all time. Radiata Stories is a title that is absolutely adored by its fans. This action JRPG was developed by Triace, and despite being over 20 years old, it still looks so charming. The story follows the journey of Jack Russell as he joins the Radiata Knights as his father once did. The major conflict here is between the humans and the non-human creatures, and Jack finds himself right in the middle of it. At one point, the story branches out and you'll have to choose which side to team up with. This has an impact on the story, the allies you can recruit, and the ending. Speaking of character recruitment, this is probably the thing that I love the most about the game. There are loads of characters that can be recruited around the lands, each with their own charming personalities and abilities. The city also feels so alive, with NPCs following their own schedules and even a day-night cycle. This felt well ahead of its time. The action-focused combat is fairly simple and initiates when you run into an enemy, instantly taking you to the field of battle. Here, you can only take control of Jack, with your other party members acting on AI. However, their behaviours can be adjusted on the fly by issuing commands. While it may be basic, I did have a lot of fun with the combat and loved how you were given so many choices when composing your party. It has been a long while since I last played this gem, but Radiata Stories gave me such fond memories. Unfortunately, there is yet to be a port or remaster for modern consoles, which makes it quite a difficult game to get your hands on. But if you have had a chance to experience it, I'm sure you'll agree that this is well deserving of a spot on my list. Trails from Zero and Trails to Azure, also known as a Crossbell duology, share this spot on the list since they are so directly connected and are both incredibly awesome. These two games were stuck in Japan for 12 years, with the only way to play it in English being through the fan translation by the Geofront, who did an absolutely amazing job, by the way. But in 2022, we finally got an official localization for modern consoles, which, believe it or not, actually used the Geofront's fan translation as its base, which is not something you see every day. Zero and Azure are set after the Sky trilogy and take place in Crossbell, which lies between Erebonia and Kelvard. You play the role of Lloyd Bannings, who is a rookie police detective assigned to the brand new Special Support Section, or SSS. Lloyd teams up with 3 other rookies who are all assigned to complete odd jobs around the city. These seem insignificant at first, but of course things heat up as the game progresses. As you would expect from a Trails game, the writing is slow but awesome, the characters are brilliantly developed, and there are countless moments that just made me say wow. And where Zero felt a bit smaller in scale compared to the other Trails games, Azure steps things up a notch by exploring the themes and questions we had from Zero and also presenting a much larger conflict. Now, something quite unique about this duology compared to the other games in the series is that the majority of the game is set in the city of Crossbell. Each of the districts within Crossbell have their own look and feel to them, and it was really nice spending time running around and exploring everything that I could. Having one massive hub to call home was a nice change, especially since there is so much going on in the city and so many different NPCs to talk to. In terms of combat, if you've played the other Trails games, particularly the Sky series, you know what to expect. Characters can move around a grid, either attacking, using EP on arts, or CP on unique character crafts. Azure then introduces a couple of new additions, including turn bonuses, which constantly make you reassess your actions based on which bonuses are coming up. This combat is a lot of fun, and I had a ball decimating my enemies with the many snazzy looking S-craft abilities. If you're into the Trails series, then playing Zero and Azure is a no-brainer, and the recent release on modern consoles is the best way to do this. After being completely blown away with what was, and still is, the most insane, unexpected, incredible franchise crossover I've ever experienced, I wanted more. I wanted to travel to more Disney planets and meet the characters I grew up with. I wanted to adventure once again with Sora, Donald and Goofy and uncover the mysteries of the galaxy. And I wanted to meet even more Final Fantasy characters who are from my favourite games of all time. Kingdom Hearts 2 gave me all of that and more. It was also released just before the convoluted cranial copulation that the series later turned into. I mean, I'm starting to think that I might be Xehanort. Wouldn't that be a plot twist and a half? Kingdom Hearts 2 takes place a year after Chain of Memories and follows Sora, Donald and Goofy as they wake up from a year-long slumber. The trio continue their quest to find their lost friends, including Riku and King Mickey, and travel to a huge range of both new and old Disney worlds. Kingdom Hearts 2 also delves deeper into the concept of the heart by introducing a new group of enemies known as the Nobodies, who are the remnants left behind when individuals become heartless. Then there's the mysterious Organization 13, who have their own plans, and meeting these characters and trying to work out everyone's motives makes for one hell of a story. The combat was also taken to the next level with some excellent new additions. First, there is reaction commands, which are context-sensitive actions allowing the player to perform powerful moves or evasions by pressing the button at the right time. Then there's drive forms, which allows Sora to transform into different forms, each with different abilities and combat styles. These additions add new layers of strategy and was definitely one of the highlights of the game. Then you've got your revamped gummy ship system, secret bosses, loads of optional content, and a secret ending. Kingdom Hearts 2 really is an incredible game and easily my favourite in the series. I cannot wait to see what happens next in Kingdom Hearts 4. I am sure that I'm not the only one who got the very first taste of Dragon Quest with Dragon Quest VIII Journey of the Cursed King. I'd obviously been hearing about this series for years, especially how popular it was in Japan, but the sad truth is that this was actually the very first Dragon Quest game that was released in Australia. Yeah, most people just don't understand the amount of amazing titles we missed out on over here in the Down Under. But it really didn't take long to understand why this series had been so critically acclaimed for such a long time. Dragon Quest VIII is one incredible JRPG, and even after all of these years, its cel-shaded graphical style still looks great. Seriously, cel-shaded graphics really do stand the test of time. Dragon Quest VIII follows the journey of an unnamed hero and his companions as they set out to lift a curse placed on the kingdom by the evil Jester Del Magus after he steals an ancient scepter. Eventually, they'll uncover the secrets about the scepter's power, which leads to facing an even greater threat than Del Magus. This story was a lot of fun and has a great mix of humor, drama, and adventure. This was the perfect game to put a smile on my face after a long day of, school. Damn, that was a while ago. And while the main character is a silent protagonist, which is something I've never been a fan of, the characters that accompany him are really awesome. Some of these characters like Yangus, Jessica, and Angelo are so memorable, and it feels like it was only yesterday that I played it last. The traditional turn-based combat system also took a massive step forward while still retaining the classic style of the earlier games. The old school input system and viewpoint remained, but the evolution to 3D character models meant that your party could now be seen when performing their actions. Then there's the tension system, which allows your party to psych themselves up to increase the power of their next attack, and this added a new layer of strategy to battles. Dragon Quest VIII put the series on the map for many Western gamers, including myself, and I couldn't have asked for a better way to be introduced to this great series. In 1995, which was somehow 30 years ago, a little RPG was released by Konami on the PlayStation 1. Little did I know then that said RPG would be the debut title of my favourite game series of all time. I am talking about Suikoden, and if you've been subbed to my channel for a while, you'll know how much of a fan I am. There was a stage in my life that I lived and breathed this series, and I still would be had it not been for the fact that we haven't had a mainline entry since 2006, but at least there are remasters for the first two games just around the corner, and I cannot put into words how excited I am about that. Suikoden 1's story is one of its greatest strengths. It's full of tragedy, emotion, betrayal, and driven by some incredible characters. But what's it all about? You play the role of Tur McDowell, the son of Tio, who is a well-respected great general of the Empire. Early in the game, one of Tur's companions, Ted, is forced to use his magical rune to defeat a monster. The thing is, this isn't just a regular rune. It is the Soul Eater, one of the 27 true runes which not only grant their users incredible powers, but also agelessness. These 27 true runes are one of the things that make this series so amazing, and they are the core reason for most of the series' major conflicts. After a string of events involving the Empire trying to obtain this rune, Ted is forced to pass it on to Tur. With nowhere to go, Tur eventually joins up with the rebellion army and helps turn the small group of freedom fighters operating out of the sewers into a massive army capable of taking the Empire down. The whole premise of turning a small group into a powerhouse force through gaining allies and forming alliances is something that makes Suikoden so great. You can recruit 108 characters around the region to fight for your cause, and these characters can not only be used in battle, but may also add something to your ever-growing headquarters such as shops or minigames. Other standout features include 1 vs 1 duels and large-scale war battles, which makes these massive conflicts feel so much more epic. Suikoden is an excellent JRPG and the start of something special. It sets the groundwork for what is one of the greatest games of all time. But is Suikoden 2 going to take top spot? You'll have to wait and find out. Long story short, if you're a JRPG fan and somehow haven't experienced this series, do yourself a favor and play the remasters as soon as possible. You will not regret it. Breath of Fire 3 is usually regarded as the best in the series, and this absolute gem certainly didn't let me down. For a series whose peaks were just so high, it's really astounding that we haven't had a proper new entry, or at least a remaster since the PS2 era, but that's a conversation for another day. Breath of Fire 3 takes place some time after the events of the first game, and no, there is no requirements to have played any others in the series. There are some nice references, but that's about it. Here, we follow yet another incarnation of our favourite blue-haired dragon Ryu, who is the remaining member of the Dragon Brood who were destroyed many years ago. Eventually, Ryu teams up with some others and sets out to find God so he can get some answers regarding his clan's history. Something I really liked about this storytelling is how the first third is told when the characters are younger, and then after a significant event in the plot, time leaps forward several years, which is when it truly starts to pick up. This story is my favourite in the series and is driven by a pretty memorable cast of characters who are also among my favourite in the series. The turn-based combat system has its basic commands that you'd expect, but with a few unique upgrades, including the dragon transformation system. This allows you to splice different dragon genes together, which allows Ryu to transform into loads of different types of dragons. It's an awesome feeling discovering a new uber powerful transformation and then seeing them wreak havoc against your enemies. Another standout mechanic is the master system. Basically, there's a dozen or so masters scattered around the world who can link to a character, but only after satisfying the specific requirements, such as dispatching 30 enemies in a row without resting. This adds a lot of variation to each playthrough and is one of my favourite things about the game. And how could I not mention the fairy village system? In a nutshell, you can turn a single hut into a full village filled with fairies that provide the party with loads of benefits. The best part is that it's fully customizable. You can build shops, inns, or even casinos. Each fairy also has its own stats, making it better suited for different tasks in the village. Breath of Fire 3 is jam-packed with awesome mechanics and tells a great story, and that is why it ranks so highly in my top JRPGs of all time. I've been slaying monsters with oversized swords since 2002, so the thought of befriending these giant creatures and having them fight alongside me took a little while to adjust to. But once I did, I could not get enough of breeding, training, and riding on these ferocious beasts that I've been familiar with for the past 20 odd years. Monster Hunter Stories is a spin-off series of the hugely popular Monster Hunter series. The story begins with the mysterious mass disappearance of Rathalos, which are probably the most well-known monsters in the series. Upon investigating this, your character is met by a strange white-haired girl who entrusts you with a Rathalos egg. This Rathalos, conveniently named Ratha, is soon discovered to be a creature destined to bring ruin to the world. Your character will progress through several large areas of the world, investigating the mysteries of the missing Rathalos and learning the truth behind your Ratha. The main narrative is surprisingly fun, and it does a great job in setting up countless moments that allow these beasts that made the series so popular plenty of opportunity to shine. But I think my favourite thing about Wings of Ruin is the amazing turn-based battle system. The core mechanic behind this combat is choosing which type of attack to hit the enemy with: power, speed, or technical, and these work in a rock, paper, scissors fashion. Choosing the right type of attack is the key to every victory, but the challenge is that each enemy's attack patterns will change. This means that you'll have to constantly switch in the right monsters from your roster of 6 for each situation. And that brings us to the monsters themselves. Once you find an egg in a monster's den, it can be hatched in town, with each hatched monstie starting at level 1. These monsters will naturally grow stronger by being playing in your party or when sending them out on expeditions, but it's the gene system that really allows you to customize these beasts to your liking. I loved how this system works, as it really makes you carefully think about which monsters to keep, which ones to develop, and which ones to sacrifice. Monster Hunter Stories 2 Wings of Ruin is what happens when you breed a Pokemon game with a mainstream Monster Hunter title, and the result, an absolute killer JRPG that seems to have flown under the radar of many. The Breath of Fire series is one that fans have been screaming for new life for many years, and there's a good reason for that. This series has some absolute killer titles, and it's such a crime that many modern gamers don't really have an easy way to play them. Breath of Fire 4 has always been my personal favourite in the series, and I have such fond memories of playing it as a kid. The game starts with Nina and Cray shipwrecked in the middle of a desert when they come across a large dragon who transforms into a young man. As you would expect, this is Ryu, and he doesn't remember anything, so he decides to tag along with Nina. Meanwhile, the ancient Emperor Fulu rises from his burial chambers after hundreds of years with the intention of retaking the world. Breath of Fire 4 tells its story through these two different points of view, with both characters' paths eventually crossing. I have always loved games with this narrative style. Now, the turn-based combat is something that I felt really reached its peak in Breath of Fire 4. You can take 3 party members into battle but can switch in your reserves at any time. This provides a great incentive to use all 6 characters, particularly because switching between them doesn't come at any cost. And then, of course, we have Ryu. He has the unique ability of turning into a dragon, which is a staple of the series. But putting the great story and combat aside, there are plenty of other reasons why Breath of Fire 4 is one of the best. Starting with the Masters, these are NPCs who are willing to teach you what they know if the right conditions are met. For example, Cryrick will teach you a skill if you perform a 30-hit combo in one turn, and then another skill if you perform a 40-hit combo, and so on. Finding these masters, meeting the requirements, and taking advantages of their unique bonuses in battle was a clear standout feature of the game. And who could forget the fairy village system that allows you to build a village and assign different jobs to its fairy inhabitants, and the fishing system, which is easily my favourite fishing minigame of all time. Breath of Fire 4 has a lot to offer and is an absolute must play if you're into timeless classics. One of the best video game surprises that I have ever had was when I discovered Valkyria Chronicles for the first time. It was unlike any other RPG I had ever played in my life. The combination of its outstanding story and addictive strategic war-inspired gameplay was incredible, and I've been following this series ever since. The game follows Welkin Gunther, a young lieutenant leading Squad 7, who are a militia unit fighting to defend Gallia from the Imperial forces. Valkyria Chronicles' unique method of comic book-like storytelling and meaningful cutscenes make for some absolutely awesome moments that easily rival most JRPGs acclaimed for their stories. There is plenty of mystery and loads of twists and turns that kept me glued to my screen, along with a cast of outstanding characters who all have their time to shine. Seriously, this game is up there in the top tier of gaming stories. And then there's the gameplay. In order to progress to the next chapter, you'll need to pit your forces against the enemy in a large-scale war. This requires you to carefully select the most appropriate soldiers from your large squad and complete the mission objective, which will be something along the lines of capturing the enemy camps or eliminating everyone on the battlefield. Every single move that you make will have to be carefully thought out. Should you try to barge through the enemy fire with your trooper class soldier, or pick off a single enemy commander with your sniper? You will face decisions like this constantly, and for every success or mistake that you make, you will be that much more prepared if a similar situation arises in the future. This game will make you the elite military strategist that you've always dreamt of being since you were in diapers. There's also a huge emphasis on managing your troops and choosing the right ones for each battle. Each soldier has a specific class, and each of these classes has their own strengths and weaknesses. Some of these include scouts, who can cover a lot of ground each turn but have a relatively low attack power, and lancers, who carry large rocket launchers around and are essential for destroying enemy tanks. In addition to a class, each soldier also has unique potentials that affect how they perform on the battlefield, and these can be both positive and negative. There is a lot to think about and many ways to handle each situation, which is exactly how a quality SRPG should be. If you missed out on this masterpiece back in the day, you can try out the remastered version available on the PS4 and Switch. Ever since this highly successful Kickstarter campaign back in 2020, the hype for this gorgeous retro-style RPG was massive, and it did not disappoint. Sea of Stars really is a love letter to Super Nintendo-era JRPGs with clear inspirations from games like Chrono Trigger, Super Mario RPG, and Lufia 2. The first thing I'll say about Sea of Stars is that it's absolutely gorgeous, but you don't need me to tell you that. Just look at it. And this may be hard to believe, but the soundtrack is just as good. It is perfect in retaining those retro vibes with some absolute banger battle themes too. Sea of Stars centers around Zale and Valir, two children of the solstice who have the ability to harness the powers of the sun and the moon. These two protagonists will eventually team up with others and travel around the world to save it from its impending doom. The story here is one of the strongest parts of Sea of Stars, and it really feels like the kind of journeys that I used to go on in my favourite retro RPGs of the past. The writing is brilliant, and I was always so engaged with what was going on, with the next big dose of plot progression always only a dungeon away. Sea of Stars' world is divided into continents, each with their own dungeons, towns, fishing spots, and other locations to explore. Emphasis on the word explore, because exploring each and every one of these locations and finding the many secrets was one of the highlights of the game. When it comes to the combat system, it is clearly inspired by Chrono Trigger. During your turn, you can choose any of your 3 characters to act. There is no traditional turn order on display here. Instead, a turn countdown will indicate when your enemies will attack, and this is displayed by a number next to the sprite. One of the coolest features of this system is timing your attacks and blocks, and this reminded me a lot of Super Mario RPG and Final Fantasy VIII's Gunblade attacks, which are my jam. This combat works incredibly well and shines particularly bright during the boss fights. Most of the major bosses have their own sort of strategy that you'll need to work out, and defeating them always felt rewarding. If looking at all this eye candy and listening to me praise this game for the past couple of minutes isn't enough to make you want to play Sea of Stars, then I don't know what will. Sea of Stars is an incredible JRPG and so worthy of a spot so high on my list. I don't know how or why it happened, but Parasite Eve was a game that got away from me during the PS1 era. It wasn't until a few years ago that I could finally say that I completed this horror-themed classic. Parasite Eve is so highly regarded for a reason, and as a hardcore 90s RPGer, it is so easy to see why. The game begins with a young detective Aya attending an opera. In what can only be described as the most eventful opera possible, the lead actress Melissa goes a little crazy and sets everyone in the audience alight. This mass murder left no survivors, except for Aya, who somehow manages to escape unharmed. The entire game revolves around Aya investigating this and other supernatural events around Manhattan. To put it simply, this dark themed story had me hooked from the start, and it did not let me go. The whole visual style of Parasite Eve is brilliant, or at least it would have been for its time. The pre-rendered backgrounds are all detailed and unique, and the dark visual style helps create a feeling of hopelessness and unease. This is especially evident when the entire city is forced to evacuate. This leaves Aya and a few other police officers up against a supernatural entity that you know nothing about. Now, the combat is one of the coolest things about Parasite Eve. Aya can perform an action whenever the ATB fills up at the top of the screen, but what's interesting is that while filling it, you're able to control Aya around the battlefield. Trying to dodge enemy attacks and choosing when to attack is such a vital part of battle. The main method of dishing out damage is through Aya's firearms, but she can also use her PE abilities to cast support spells. This works well because PE will naturally regenerate as the battle progresses, which makes timing their use so important. The combat here is really awesome, with some of the boss battles being very memorable. Fans have been raving about Parasite Eve for years, and rightfully so. It is a great game and one that I was able to thoroughly enjoy without the need for nostalgia goggles. Ni no Kuni Wrath of the White Witch was without a doubt one of the standout JRPGs from the PS3 era, which was during a time when the genre was in a bit of a slump. This game instantly received a load of hype due to its collaboration with Studio Ghibli. They're the studio that made Princess Mononoke, Spirited Away, and all of those other masterpiece animes. It really doesn't take long to see the quality of their films carried over to the game. Ni no Kuni did not spare any expense. The story begins in the town of Motorville, where Oliver and his friends are busy working on a car. Just like any other teenager, Oliver decides to disobey his mother and sneak out at night in order to give the car a test run. This didn't turn out so well, as within seconds the car crashes nose first into a lake. Fortunately, Oliver is saved by his mother, but she later dies as a result of saving her son. As you would expect, Oliver is a mess and tries to shut himself off from the world. Then, the magic happens. Oliver's tears magically springs his favourite doll Drippy into life. Drippy soon introduces Oliver to a parallel world in which only he can save it from the evil wizard Shadar. The story is quite simple and cruises in third gear until the final third of the game when you're hit with a load of twists and turns, and this is where the story hits its peak. While this story can be childish at times, I did find a lot of enjoyment with it. Now, the fantasy world of Ni no Kuni is absolutely perfect, with few JRPGs up until that point giving me such enjoyment in its world map exploration. The desire to explore every inch of the world and uncover all the secrets really took me back to the PS1 Final Fantasy titles. This world is also littered with creatures called familiars who you can catch, customize, evolve, and use to fight in battle. Kicking ass with these little critters is a load of fun. Each of the three main characters can equip 3 familiars at a time, and they can be rotated as many times as needed, and they also share the same HP and MP pool. Each turn your familiars can attack, use an ability or a defensive maneuver, and these are governed by cooldowns. There's also HP, MP and golden orbs that often scatter throughout the battlefield, so it pays off to have an awareness of your surroundings. Managing your MP is one of the key strategies in battle, as without it you won't be able to heal. I have so many fond memories of playing Ni no Kuni for the first time, and I'll always remember it for how beautiful it looks and sounds. If you did miss out on this classic, there was a remaster for modern consoles and PC. This next entry refers to the entire Cold Steel arc from the Trail series, which is probably the most well known out of them all. I had the PS4 version of Cold Steel 1 laying around for over a year before I finally decided to see what the Trail series was all about. And from there, I was completely hooked and proceeded to play through all 8 of the lengthy games that were released at that point in time. The 4 titles in the Cold Steel arc are set in Erebonia, a massive country with a load of problems. The biggest of which is the internal tension between the noble factions and the imperial government, but also the uncertain relations with nearby countries and other groups. You play the role of Reen, who starts off as a first-year student at the widely renowned Thor's Military Academy. Reen and 8 other students are soon placed in Class 7, a new experimental sort of class who have a different kind of curriculum. I'm not going to say anything else because I don't want to spoil anything, but I can tell you that a lot happens through the course of these 4 games. The nutshell version is that Reen and his classmates eventually get caught up in a massive conflict, and slowly watching this unfold is an experience like no other. Emphasis on the word slow. These Trails games, and the whole series in general, are slow burners. There is a lot of dialogue, major character development, and loads of time spent setting up the world and teaching you about the lore. At times, it may seem that nothing is happening for hours, but this is also what makes the storytelling so effective. When Cold Steel hits, it hits hard, with some absolutely sensational scenes and events. The same can be said about the colourful cast of characters. Watching them grow and learning more and more about them over the 4 Cold Steel titles was an absolute treat. These are some of my all-time favourite characters. Story aside, Cold Steel is a quality JRPG in all of the other areas that matter. The turn-based combat is very strategic and improves greatly over the course of the series. The RPG mechanics also allow for a load of tinkering, and this is one of those games that it is very easy to absolutely break through some good customization. Then there's the soundtrack, which is full of banger after banger. The Falcom sound team once again show why they're one of the best in the business. I do understand that the Cold Steel series, or the entire Trail series in general, may be daunting to get into, but if you do get the time and enjoy a slow burner with outstanding characters, deep lore and incredible payoff, then few games will do it better than Trails of Cold Steel. Next up, we have an absolute beast of an SRPG, Tactics Ogre Reborn. Before we get into it, here's a bit of context. Tactics Ogre Let Us Clean Together is a PSP remake of the Japanese exclusive Tactics Ogre released on the Super Famicom in 1995. Fast forward to 2022 and a remaster of the PSP remake titled Tactics Ogre Reborn was born. Now, Reborn is one of those very meaty remasters with loads of changes that both enhances the original experience and also changes up the gameplay significantly. The game takes place on the Isles of Valeria following the death of its king. The problem is, he didn't name a successor, and this leads to a civil war between three groups. You play the role of Denham, a young Wellister who, with his sister and best friend, joined the Wellister Resistance. If you're into complex political narratives full of lore, twists and turns, then this game will deliver. Something that I really liked about the story is that throughout the 4 chapters, the storyline will branch depending on your decisions during key scenes. These decisions will not only have a huge impact on following events, but will also dictate which characters you can recruit to your side. There are loads that can be recruited, most of which are easily missable. The combat works exactly the way you'd expect from an SRPG. Characters can move through the gridded map based on their movement stat and then either attack or use a skill or magic spell that consumes TP. There are a decent amount of classes too, and finding the right mix and maximizing their effectiveness is crucial. One of the most significant new additions to Reborn is buff cards, and this is an absolute game changer. There are 4 types of cards that randomly generate over the battlefield, and these buffs last for the remainder of the battle. This combat is highly addictive, but can also be very difficult, especially since there are level caps at different points in the game. If you're a fan of the genre, playing Tactics Ogre Reborn is an absolute no-brainer and goes down as one of my favourite SRPGs ever. The Legend of Dragoon was one of my favourite PS1 RPGs as a kid. While this game may be 25 years old, it still manages to blow me away and is easily in the category of classics that you just gotta play. I absolutely love the atmosphere that the game creates, mostly due to the pre-rendered backgrounds that were breathtaking for its time and really helped bring the locations to life. FMV sequences were one of my favourite parts of RPGs of the era, and the sheer amount of them easily rivaled Final Fantasy games at the time. They are just so cool in all of their standard definition glory. The Legend of Dragoon centres around Dart, who is on his way back home to Celis after going on a 5-year journey to track down a mysterious black monster who killed his parents and destroyed his birth city. After narrowly escaping an attack from a mysterious dragon, he arrives home only to discover that it's been destroyed by the Imperial Army, who have also kidnapped his childhood friend Shana. While setting out to save her, he obtains a Dragoon spirit which allows him to turn into a Dragoon. Dragoons are basically chosen by fate to rule over dragons, who are a huge part of the Dragon campaign 11,000 years ago. Following a bunch of kick-ass Dragoons fight an ultimate evil is just as enjoyable for me today as it was all those years ago. The turn-based combat system is pretty standard except for one major mechanic, the addition system. When a character attacks, they don't just attack. Oh no, they addition. An addition is basically a set of attacks that requires you to manually hit X at the right time. Failure to do so and your addition combo will stop, meaning less damage will be dealt. I loved this, as it will always require you to pay attention even during regular battles. Once your characters have built up enough SP, they can transform into dragoons. When in this form, their stats are majorly buffed and they can also unleash powerful magic spells. Now, it may seem like the dragoon form will always be the way to go, but that's not always the case. You see, dragoons cannot use items, which means healing would be out of the question. Therefore, choosing who to turn into a dragoon and when is a key factor that always needs to be considered. The Legend of Dragoon is an incredible game, and for such a popular quality title, I am surprised that more hasn't ever been done with the series. Fingers crossed that we get something soon. At number 31, we have the third mainline title in the Suikoden series. Released in 2002 for the PS2, Suikoden 3 is a follow-up to what many people consider as the best JRPG of all time. This one did things very differently though, which was a bit of a shock to fans of the series, but personally, I loved it all. For starters, this entry was the first to be entirely 3D, which was a stark change from the traditional 2D sprites. Then there's the story, which offers a very unique way to progress the narrative through its Trinity Sight system. The game takes place in the Grasslands, a region caught in conflict between various factions. However, rather than watching events unfold from a single main character's point of view, you'll need to play through the game from 3 different perspectives. There's Hugo, a young warrior from the Karaya clan, Chris Lightfellow, a knight of Zaxxon, and Ghetto, a mercenary working for Harmonia. Being able to see events unfold from different points of view creates some incredible moments. When their paths all eventually come together, wowee, I will never forget that event. Suikoden 3's combat is also a lot different from its predecessors. While you can still take 6 party members into battle, they'll need to be paired up and respond to shared actions. This really makes you think about which type of characters you should pair up together. Oh, and you can also mount creatures in battle. This was so cool to me back in the day. Then, of course, you have everything else that makes the Suikoden series so amazing. There's 108 different characters to recruit. There's a HQ that grows as more characters join your cause. There's strategic large-scale war battles and also intense 1v1 duels. Overall, Suikoden 3 is an absolutely outstanding game, and there was a time when it was my favourite in the series. With the way that the series is being revived at the moment, I think it's only a matter of time before the third in the series gets the remaster treatment. This would be the perfect time to play this masterpiece if you haven't already. At number 30, I'm going to be combining both Octopath Traveler 1 and 2 together as they both present a very similar experience to one another. The first title was released in 2018, and this is the JRPG that put the HD 2D style on the map. I mean, who would have ever thought that sprite-based games could be so beautiful? It absolutely blew me away, and to be honest, it kinda still does. The combination of ordinary sprites thrown into an absolutely breathtaking HD world is a style that I'll never get sick of. This series is named Octopath Traveler for a reason. There are 8 playable characters, each character has a different path and they travel across the world. You begin these games choosing a single character, and after completing the first chapter, the remaining stories can be completed in any order. While these characters all have completely independent stories, they can be added to each other's parties, and I thought this was such a great way to progress the narrative. While I definitely had my favourites, each of these stories were thoroughly enjoyable too, and put simply, it's a style that I can so easily recommend to fans of the genre. The exploration in these games was also a lot of fun. Each character has their own specialty to deal with situations, and these will be required to complete side quests, access certain areas, or progress their storylines. For instance, Albrecht can challenge any NPC to a duel, so if there's a jerk blocking the doorway, you can basically beat the crap out of them if you want to get inside. Therion, on the other hand, is a thief who can steal from just about anyone for some great items, which is why I always had him in my party. This extra level of interactivity with NPCs really sets this game aside from most games in the genre. Then we have the turn-based combat that pits 4 of your characters up against your enemies. Each enemy has a number within a blue shield, and in order to dish out decent damage, you'll need to break their defenses by exploiting their weaknesses a set number of times. This system is awesome as it requires you to think about how to proceed at every single point of the battle, and this is especially true in the epic boss fights, which require a lot of thought due to the varied attack patterns. It took me about 3 seconds to fall in love with Octopath Traveler and its sequel, making them an easy pick for a spot so high on my list. After the series' debut title in 2008, it was a bit of a rocky road for the series, with their handheld releases, Japanese exclusivity, and a spin-off which was a colossal disappointment. But with Valkyria Chronicles 4, this war-based strategy RPG went back to its roots to give us everything we loved about the original, plus more. This story was one of my favourite things about the game. Valkyria Chronicles 4 begins in Gallia during the Second Europa War. The main character Claude and his childhood friends Kai and Raz are members of the Federation Army's Squad E and are sent to carry out Operation Northern Cross in hope of finally ending the war. This story was constantly engaging with elements of mystery and plenty of plot twists throughout. There were also some more mature themes that surfaced towards the later parts of the game, which often made me question where my loyalties lied. The turn-based strategic gameplay is very similar to previous titles. You choose a selection of units to complete mission objectives. This will involve running around with your squad, dispatching the enemy forces, and capturing opposing camps. There is a lot of strategy involved here, as the different unit types, terrain, and weather will impact how to proceed. Prior to each battle, you'll need to choose a range of different units to take into each scenario, and these are designed to really put your problem-solving skills to the test. This is particularly true if you want to receive an A rank for each mission. Some of the major new additions here include the Grenadier unit. These are long-range explosive experts that pack a serious punch with their area attacks. There's also the Cactus APC, which lets you transport units around the battlefield, making those unit types with less walking range so much more viable. This gameplay loop of watching a gripping story unfold, putting your wartime strategies to the test, and then upgrading your units, weapons and orders is what makes Valkyria Chronicles 4 such an incredible experience. This is a series that I don't hear enough people talking about, so if any of this sounds interesting to you, Valkyria Chronicles 4 is the perfect place to start. There was some massive hype surrounding the release of Metaphor ReFantazio. This was a debut title developed by Studio Zero, which was made up of key members of past Persona and Shin Megami Tensei games. While Metaphor is a brand new IP, it still feels a lot like a Persona game in its combat, social systems, and its time constraints. Essentially, this game is what you'd get if the Persona series graduated from high school and entered the fantasy world, and I was all for it. Metaphor ReFantazio is set in the Kingdom of Uchronia, a medieval realm made up of different tribes, all with different social statuses. At the start of the game, the king is murdered by one of his generals, and with no true successor to the throne, the realm is thrown into a popularity contest known as the Royal Tournament, where its winner will be named the new king. As a participant of the competition, the main character and his companions travel around the region gaining support of others in hope of returning the throne to the true prince. He is currently hidden in a comatose state. Metaphor's story style will provide much of what you'd expect from a Persona game. There is a lot of downtime where you'll need to choose how to spend your days. This will usually be spending time with characters to increase their bond levels, trekking out into dungeons to complete side quests, or upgrading your royal virtue stats. And while slow, gradual progression is the name of the game, when the story hits, it is a home run, and there are many incredible moments throughout this lengthy journey. Dungeon crawling is another major feature of Metaphor. The main story's dungeons are massive, with unique distinguishing features, often taking multiple game days to get through. When it comes to the combat, Metaphor features a hybrid system similar to Trails Through Daybreak. You can attack enemies on the map, which allows you to instantly defeat weaker enemies or stun stronger enemies to bring an advantage into the turn-based battles. This turn-based system is where the combat truly shines and features the traditional press-turn system where exploiting an enemy's weakness grants you another turn. This means that going into battle with an enemy's strengths and weaknesses in mind should be your number one consideration. The other standout feature is the archetype system, which is basically classes. Each archetype comes with a load of unique abilities, and learning more of these will give you more flexibility in battle. You see, you have a few free slots to equip skills from other archetypes that you've previously learnt. This system was fantastic and provides countless different builds and strategies in battle. Metaphor ReFantasio is one of those titles that people are going to be talking about for a long time, and if you missed out on it back in 2024, you know what to do. Yeah, you all knew this was coming, you just didn't know when. Chrono Trigger is arguably the most beloved JRPG of all time, and I know many of you would have had this as your number one. If you looked up Timeless Classic in the dictionary, you would see Chrono Trigger, and I truly believe that all JRPG fans, young and old, need to experience this legendary game. The story begins at the Millennial Fair in 1000 AD, where Chrono meets a mysterious girl named Marl. When a teleportation experiment goes wrong, Marl is sent back into time and Chrono follows to rescue her. Yeah, time traveling is a huge part of Chrono Trigger, and you would be hard pressed to find a game that does it better. Now, Chrono will meet many companions on its travels across the different time periods from the prehistoric age all the way to the distant future. Their journey eventually leads them on a quest to defeat Lavos, a monstrous entity that will destroy the world in the future. There is something so special, magical, and nostalgic about time traveling with this outstanding cast and watching the story unfold, and if you've ever played the game, I'm sure you would agree. Chrono Trigger was so far ahead of its time in so many ways, and was even the game that coined the term New Game Plus. On playing the game a second time, you could battle the final boss at different points in the story for different endings, and this was awesome. Chrono Trigger's turn-based combat was another standout feature. Battles occur directly on map, and when you run into an enemy, the battle will instantly begin. When a character's ATB gauge fills up, they can attack or use a unique tech. The awesome thing here is that combos with allies can be performed, and this creates some really engaging battles. And before I move on to the next entry, I knew you guys would never let me hear the end of it if I didn't mention the soundtrack, which is often regarded as Yasunori Masuda's greatest. There are so many memorable tracks here, and it was really difficult to choose one for this entry, but it's not like it's possible to choose incorrectly here. Chrono Trigger, you have been loved for 30 years now, and I'm sure the same will be said in another 30 years. Unicorn Overlord was developed by Vanillaware, who are no strangers to creating incredible games. This masterclass SRPG title may have been overshadowed by other powerhouse games released around the same time, but I tell you now, it is one that every strategy fan should play. Unicorn Overlord follows Prince Elaine on a quest to regain control of Cornea, which was usurped by the evil General Valmor years prior. Throughout this journey, Elaine will travel through 5 nations where he will liberate towns and gain allies so that he can stand up against the might of Valmor and his army. This premise sets up the gameplay perfectly, but let me be clear, the story is not why you should be playing Unicorn Overlord. It is the gameplay that makes this game stand out as one of the best. At the start of each scenario, you'll need to dispatch your units, which are made up of 3 to 5 characters, then defeat the enemy units and eventually capture their main base. The map movement works in real time, where you can select a unit and tell it where to go and who to encounter in battle. The character classes that make up each unit is one of the biggest factors that you'll need to consider when choosing who to encounter. For example, flying creatures are weak against arrows and armor classes are weak against magic. For this reason, you should always have a range of different units to cater to different enemy types. Now, when two units run into each other, a battle will take place, except that it's probably not what you'd expect from a strategy game. For one, you don't control your character's actions in battle. All unit actions will be preset, so you'll simply watch the battle unfold. Secondly, only one single round will take place, so if an entire unit isn't defeated, they'll still be alive, albeit wounded, on the map. These outstanding strategic wars are perfectly supported by a deep unit management system. There is so much you can do to customize your characters and units. Every time I recruited a new character, found a new piece of equipment, or learnt a new ability, I could not wait to jump right back into the menus and tinker some more. I seriously can't remember the last time I've spent so long in menus and loved every second of it. For its absolutely incredible gameplay, deep addictive RPG mechanics, and stunning visuals, Unicorn Overlord is a must-play title. Over the years, the Tales series has become one of my very favourites, and Tales of Berseria is up there with the best of them. And this isn't just because the main protagonist is a badass hottie who wears next to nothing. Berseria is an incredibly strong RPG in just about every area, and is a must-play for all JRPG and Tales fans. Berseria is so much darker than most of the other Tales games. You start off as young, happy Velvet who spends her days living the quiet life with her younger brother Laphicet and brother-in-law Artorias, but this soon changes when Artorias decides to slaughter Laphicet in front of Velvet's eyes. Here, her negative energy consumes her, causing her to turn into a demon and slaughter everyone in the village. After 3 years of being imprisoned, forced to feed on other demons for survival, Velvet escapes and finally gets her chance for revenge. This story is sensational. It is engaging at all times and continues to build up until the very end. And in true Tales form, the characters are also incredibly strong, well developed, and supported by an excellent cast of voice actors. And this goes for the antagonists too. When it comes to the combat, Berseria features your typical Tales action-focused gameplay. Attacking consumes soul points, and these recharge after a short time of not attacking. You gain more of these souls when you stun or kill something, but you lose an entire soul if you're hit, which greatly limits your combo potential. Each character also has a unique ability that really differentiates each of the characters. Velvet, for instance, goes into beast mode when R2 is hit and completely tears her opponents to shreds, but when she comes out of beast mode, she has less souls to combo with. This makes soul point management incredibly important. The amazing story, memorable cast of characters, and addictive action combat makes Tales of Berseria not only one of the best Tales games, but also one of the best JRPGs ever made. Next up, we have what I believe to not only be the best JRPG, but also the best game on the Super Nintendo system. Final Fantasy VI took such an incredible step up from previous Final Fantasy games, and I know many of you out there still consider it as the best Final Fantasy to date. The biggest leap was in its storytelling and large quality cast of characters. The story follows Tara Branford, a young woman with mysterious magical abilities who is initially on a mission for the Empire. Early in the game, she escapes and joins a group of rebels called the Returners who seek to overthrow the Empire and one of the best villains ever, Kefka. This story is jam-packed full of emotional, impactful, memorable moments, with scenes like the Opera House being one of the most iconic JRPG scenes of all time. The outstanding soundtrack also has some of my favourite gaming tracks ever, with Terra's theme being my personal favourite. What I loved about the story is that it's often told through different viewpoints, following different groups of characters. In fact, at times it's really unclear who the main protagonist actually is, and I loved the game for this. FF6's combat evolves the ATB system that had been present in the previous two games. Each character, out of an incredibly large cast, has their own unique ability, and this allowed for many different playstyles based on different party composition. Sabin, for instance, can perform blitz moves based on button inputs, while Edgar can use tools to deal damage. The Esper system was also outstanding. When a character equips an Esper's Magicite, they can not only summon that Esper in battle, but can also permanently learn magic as the character gains experience. This makes grinding feel so rewarding. All of the previous Final Fantasy games offered something great in their own ways, but for me, it was Final Fantasy VI where the series started giving us truly special experiences. One of these days, we're gonna get a remake, right? The Fire Emblem series is huge and has seen loads of quality SRPGs released since the original back in 1990. Fire Emblem Three Houses, released on the Switch in 2019, is my favourite one and the perfect starting point if you've never given this series a go. Now, the game is called Three Houses for a reason, and this title directly relates to the structure of the narrative. You play the role of Byleth, a mercenary who finds himself at a massive school after rescuing three young nobles. Shortly after entering, the Archbishop decides to appoint you as the professor of a class, which means that you have to choose which house you want to teach. This story had me completely engaged from start to finish, but the incredible thing about it, and perhaps a standout feature of the entire game, is that your playing experience will be so different depending on which house you choose. The narrative eventually branches out into three very different paths, and this, along with the unique classmates that join you along the way, help make the experience of each path so unique. In fact, after initially finishing the game with the Golden Deer House, I don't think I've ever been so keen to jump into a second playthrough in my life. There are also some serious Persona vibes shining through in Three Houses, in that there's a month leading up to each main quest and it's entirely up to you how you want to spend this time. There is a lot of variety here. You could spend your time exploring the school grounds, interacting with other characters, participating in side battles, conducting seminars, or just resting. And on the topic of characters, each of the Three Houses has 8 students who you'll eventually learn a lot about. I just couldn't get over the amount of voice dialogue here, as each of your students has several one-on-one scenes with every other student in the school, and these are all completely voiced with some excellent voice acting. And finally, we have the strategic turn-based combat. You can choose up to 10 party members per battle and control them in a grid-like environment. Whoever you choose to take into battle, there should be a good mix of units, as there's a lot that needs to be considered, including damage output, range, hit percentage, counter-attack damage, positioning, the list goes on. Add to this some outstanding upgrade mechanics and you'll always have a lot to think about and countless ways to play. Fire Emblem Three Houses is a masterclass in both storytelling and strategic gameplay, which is why it has a spot so high on my list. The Xeno series is the gift that keeps on giving. At number 22, we have Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but I'm also going to be including its standalone prequel, Torna the Golden Country. Both are great games and both should be played. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 takes place in Allrest, a world covered in a sea of clouds. Because of this, its people have been forced to live on giant creatures called Titans. You play the role of Rex, who makes a living salvaging items from the bottom of a sea made of thick clouds. Rex is a driver who are warriors capable of fighting with blades in battle, and blades, they are basically weaponized life forms that come from crystals. And that's where I'm going to stop, because what happens next is one hell of a ride. The story starts strong and continues to build until the very end, with countless mind-blowing moments mainly brought forth by some awesome fight sequences. And the same can be said about the prequel, which takes place roughly 500 years prior to the events. Despite being so far apart, Torna provides a quality backstory for many of the characters, and if you enjoyed Xenoblade Chronicles 2, it is a no-brainer to play Torna after. You've also got a soundtrack full of bangers, with Counter-Attack being one of my all-time favourite battle themes. And in typical Xenoblade fashion, the exploration is outstanding. Each of the large regions are stunning and provides the player with so much to do, from finding all the secret areas to defeating all the unique monsters. Running around and exploring is one of my favourite things about these games. When it comes to the combat, it starts simple but evolves into a highly complex system, and it is sensational. You can control a single character with 2 other AI allies. Each character can equip up to 3 blades, each with their own class, strengths, weaknesses, and abilities. You've got your typical auto attacks and arts, with other mechanics such as specials, team combos, and chain attacks progressively unlocking. Now, blades play a significant part in both the story and the combat, and there are loads of them to find. Some will be recruited through the story and some through side quests, but most will be obtained through opening core crystals, which can be found through the world. The blades that you're really after are the 38 rare blades, and these all look unique and play completely differently to one another. I loved this system, even if the chance of unlocking all of them was lower than winning the lottery. For me, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is among JRPG royalty and is something that everyone should experience. At number 21, we have Suikoden 5. Released in 2006 for the PS2, it is an absolute tragedy that this was the last mainline title in the series, but hopefully that will change soon. The story is set in the Queendom of Falena, 6 years before the events of Suikoden 1. The game follows Prince Freydor, who is caught in a struggle for control over the Sun Rune, a powerful true rune held by his mother. As tensions rise between the royal family and other factions, the prince is eventually forced to flee, gather allies, and reclaim his homeland. This story is absolutely sensational and contains some of the most powerful, impactful, and emotional events in the entire series. For instance, George Prime, who is a minor character in Suikoden 2, plays a huge role in this story. He is one of the Queen's knights, and some of the choices he's forced to make, wowee, it is top tier storytelling. I mean, the way that characters are expanded on throughout the series is part of what makes Suikoden so amazing. Then you've got your typical Suikoden staples, such as recruiting over 100 characters and building up your HQ and army into something that can compete with the enemy. The war battles have had a massive overhaul. For the first time in the series, allied and enemy troops move in real time, although you can still pause the battle when needed. The 1 vs 1 duels also added a time limit, which adds an extra layer of challenge since you need to make your decision quickly. When it comes to the main turn-based combat, Suikoden 5 returns to its 6-party member roots, which is something that fans really missed from the previous entry. A major new addition this time is that there are loads of different formations to choose from that will gradually be unlocked as the game progresses. For instance, instead of the typical 3 in the front, 3 in the back formation, you could go with a 1-2-3 formation with the tank character up front taking most of the damage. In my opinion, this was the perfect evolution to the combat. Most people will agree that the mainline Suikoden series concluded incredibly strongly, and my fingers are crossed that this one will receive the modern remaster that it so desperately deserves. At number 20, we have my favourite arc of the Trails series, Trails in the Sky. Chronologically, this trilogy is set before the other games, and there's no question in my mind that this is the perfect starting point if you want to get into the series for the first time. A complete remake of the first chapter is also on the horizon, so if you haven't played these games yet, that looks like the perfect way to do it. Trails in the Sky is set a few years before that of both the Cold Steel and the Crossbell games, and is set in the Kingdom of Liberl, which borders Cold Steel's Erebonia. The story focuses on 2 characters, Estelle and Joshua. They are on a quest to become fully fledged bracers, who are basically a highly respected organisation that helps civilians out. Early in the game, their father Cassius, who happens to be a famous bracer, mysteriously leaves on a mission and soon becomes completely uncontactable. This leads Estelle and Joshua to travel around the country to investigate the disappearance of their father, while also working towards becoming senior bracers. While the majority of the first chapter moves very slowly, its conclusion is probably the best cliffhanger of any game I've ever played. I have never jumped into a sequel so fast in my life. In fact, the entire second chapter of this trilogy is my favourite game in the entire series, and is why this arc is so high in my top 100. Then you have Sky the Third. This one's style of storytelling is a complete departure to what you'd expect after playing the first 2 games. It follows Kevin, who explores a mysterious place known as Phantasma. There are some great moments here, and Kevin is a complete badass, so Third is definitely worthy of a spot so high on my list. When it comes to the combat, you have the core mechanics found in all of the Trails games. The major factors to consider here include EP management for arts, CP management for crafts, and the positioning of your characters. The combat slowly evolves over the course of the trilogy, and I really feel that it reaches its peak in Sky the Third, which has some epic boss battles and a huge roster of characters to take into them. The Sky arc has so much going for it, led by an outstanding story that has some of the highest highs in the entire series. I am looking so forward to jumping in once again with the remake, and I hope you do too. I just feel bad that you'll have to experience the cliffhanger, then have to wait another few years for the second chapter to be remade. Okay, I know for a fact that there are a lot of people out there who are going to be screaming, "This is not a JRPG," but this is my list, so shh. At number 19, we have Final Fantasy XVI. It may be true that it's a completely different experience to traditional FF games, but this game managed to blow me away in more ways than I could ever imagine. Final Fantasy XVI tells a complex political narrative that constantly reminded me of Game of Thrones, and I loved this. The first couple of hours is set during Clive's younger years, where he dedicates his life to protect his brother as First Shield of Rosaria. At the conclusion of the story block set in the past, something crazy goes down, setting the rest of the game in motion, which takes place 13 years later. I'm not going to spoil anything else, but this story was one of the highlights of the game for me. There is a constant element of mystery and some of the best moments I've ever experienced in video gaming. I mean, I could not possibly imagine a better use of summons. It may have taken 16 games to get to this point, but their importance in the story and how amazingly kick-ass they are is one of the major reasons why FF16 was so damn good. There's also a very strong cast of characters, with Clive and Sid being my two favourites and having some incredible moments. When it comes to the combat, it also ticked all the boxes for me as far as single character action combat can go. You take control of Clive and can string together melee attacks with the square button and unleash magic with the triangle button. There is a large importance placed on timing your dodges and also avoiding AoE attacks, so to be successful, you'll need to balance your offense and defense. The unique feature of this system is the ability to use icon abilities in battle, which have completely different playstyles. But what's a great combat system without decent boss fights? Saying FF16's boss fights are great is an absolute understatement. Some of these fights are the best that I've ever played in a video game, and this is partly due to them being so cinematic with the epic boss themes that play in the background. FF16 was one hell of a ride. The opening scenario had me hooked almost immediately and didn't let me go until the very end of the game. That's when I came to the realization that I was going to have to move on and get on with my life. While I haven't yet had the luxury of playing through the entire Dragon Quest catalogue, out of the ones that I have played, Dragon Quest XI is easily my favourite. While certainly far from revolutionary, it is a quality, meaty JRPG that will provide many hours of fun. As you would expect, you play the role of an unnamed hero who is tucked into a basket and sent floating away down a river when he was a baby. Luckily, he was brought up by some decent people in a small village where he lived a quiet, normal life for many years. But obviously, it doesn't stay that way forever. The hero soon discovers that he is a luminary, a force of light born to fight the evil in the world. While this story is fairly basic, there are a few standout moments in its narrative, but the cast of characters are the real heroes here. I liked every one of them and really appreciated how they each had their time to shine. Also worth noting is the extensive post-game, which really doesn't feel like a post-game at all. After the credits roll, you're essentially thrown into a lengthy, full third act that deepens the story, expands the world, and unlocks a true ending. When it comes to the combat, I found it so surprising how much fun I had with it considering how simple it actually is. Wait for your turn, attack and select a spell ability or pet power, rinse and repeat until your enemies have been defeated. Other standout features include the beautiful presentation, expansive exploration, and the forging system. Through searching the world high and low, you'll find designs for equipment that you can forge, provided you have the correct materials. In most games, I feel the need to save my materials for future equipment down the track, but in Dragon Quest XI, the system encouraged me to forge and upgrade as much as possible, and this was great. Dragon Quest XI certainly doesn't reinvent the wheel, but for what it does set out to do, it does a near perfect job. I found this game incredibly difficult to put down, and for these reasons, Dragon Quest XI deserves the number 18 spot on my list. Now, everyone is always talking about how amazing both the Xenogears and Xenoblade games are, but there is seriously not enough talk about the trilogy of titles that sits right between them. I'm talking about the Xenosaga trilogy on the PS2. This sci-fi focused story begins on the spaceship the Wiglinde, with the main character, Chief Engineer Shion, running tests on a battle android named Cosmos. Shortly after, the Wiglinde is attacked by an alien race, the Gnosis, but is saved when Cosmos activates itself and starts kicking total ass. Look, I'm not even going to try to explain anything more. This story is complex and you should just experience it for yourself. This series is very story focused, with its narrative driven by many lengthy cutscenes. It has a plethora of amazing characters that all have their time in the spotlight, excellent world building, and a never-ending supply of twists and turns. The Xenosaga trilogy truly is a special experience. When it comes to the presentation of the three games, they do differ quite a lot, with the first game being much more anime looking and evolving into a more realistic style by the end of the series. The combat system also changes quite a bit throughout each installment. One of the standout features of this turn-based combat is the boost mechanic. After several attacks, your character's boost gauge will charge, allowing you to choose a time to give a character an extra turn. Selecting the right time to activate those extra actions is a key strategy that you'll need to consider in battle. In addition to kicking ass on foot, your characters can also jump into giant mechs, and this adds a whole new layer of strategy. And I have to mention the iconic vocal tracks, which have lived rent-free in my head since the 2000s. Kokoro is one of my favourites of all time. Now, while I have cemented this trilogy into the number 17 spot, the truth is, each of the games are not created equally. Xenosaga 1 starts off strong, Episode 3 is the best in the series and goes out with an absolute bang, but Xenosaga 2, it did feel like a chore at times. If it wasn't set smack in the middle of the series and so essential to play, then I would say just skip it, but you really can't afford to, as you would miss out on way too much. With the crazy amount of remasters that we've been seeing lately, I cannot believe that Xenosaga has not got the love that it deserves in a bundled remaster. This is probably the series that I would like to be re-released the most, so fingers crossed that it happens in the near future. Released in 2021, Tales of Arise was designed with the aim of evolving the Tales franchise formula, and this evolution is clear, most notably in the visual style. The game takes place in Dana, who has been under the rule of the technologically superior Reina for the past 300 years. This journey begins in Caligula, which is one of the 5 realms of Dana. Now, each realm has its own reign and lord, who runs the realm any way they see fit, which involves depleting Dana of its resources and freedoms. For instance, the boiling hot realm of Caligula has its Danas as slaves, forced to work to the bone in the heat until they die. This concept is really cool, and I was always so interested to see how the other regions were run. But it is Caligula where we first meet the game's protagonist, Elphin, who is known as the Iron Mask and slaves away day after day. Early in the game, Elphin encounters Shion, and the two set out on a journey to take down the 5 Renan Lords. I really love this story, as well as the characters that you meet along the way. The premise of Arise is awesome, and the many mysteries had me glued to the screen from start to finish. When it comes to the combat, I will say it loud and clear, this is the best combat that the series has ever seen. You can take 4 characters into battle who all play completely differently, but you can switch control between them at any time. Elphin, for instance, can transition his arts into devastating unique arts with his fire sword at the expense of some HP. These unique abilities makes his combat style so much different to everybody else. These mechanics here feel so responsive, and unleashing combos through regular attacks, air attacks, and arts feels better than it ever has. Another reason why Arise is a cut above the rest is due to the fields and dungeon design, which has taken a huge leap forward. Aside from looking absolutely drop-dead gorgeous with incredible art design, there are also loads of optional routes and alternative paths to take. Tales of Arise was so much fun, and like I said, takes a spot for my best Tales game ever, which is saying a lot. It's been a few years since we've had a new entry to the series, but if this is the way the series is evolving, I will be very happy. Yep, it is definitely here at the pointy end of the top 100 where haters are going to hate. If you're one of those people with hate fueling your heart, then you are going to love this one. I like Chrono Cross more than Chrono Trigger. There, I said it, loudly and proudly. Originally released on the PS1 in the year 2000, Chrono Cross was one of the strongest JRPGs of the era, which is often labelled the golden age of JRPGs. You play the role of Serge, a teenage boy who discovers a parallel world where he died as a child. Naturally, he is very confused, so he sets off to find some answers. The direction that Chrono Cross takes with the two parallel dimensions is outstanding. The various differences between the two worlds means that things that can't be achieved in one world can be achieved in the other. While this story does start off fairly simple, once the concept of time travel comes into play, things get a lot more complicated. This depth and complexity is something that I really enjoyed. Another noteworthy feature is the roster of characters. Where Chrono Trigger focused on a small cast of deep, memorable characters, Chrono Cross instead presents a roster of over 40 playable characters. I really enjoyed running around the worlds, recruiting the many optional characters and experimenting with them in battle. But while the story and character roster was great, if there's one thing that has been unanimously praised over the past 25 years, it is the soundtrack, which is often labelled as the best gaming soundtrack of all time. I have seriously never met anyone who has argued this point, and given the nature of the internet, that says a lot. If you've heard Yasunori Mitsuda's masterclass, you'll understand what I'm saying here. When it comes to the combat, Chrono Cross uses a turn-based system with a twist. Instead of traditional MP and ATB gauges, it relies on stamina and element levels. Essentially, each character starts off with 7 stamina points, with light, medium and heavy attacks consuming different amounts of stamina. Then there's the elements, which can be cast when the elemental level is met. Furthermore, using specific elements will adjust the elemental field effects, which comes with even more benefits, such as being able to cast summons. There is a lot to think about here, and I felt that all of the mechanics worked really well together. Chrono Cross is an all-round outstanding JRPG with so much going for it, and this is why it has a spot so high on my list. In 1998, a little gem of a strategy RPG was released for the PS1. This was a spin-off title to what was the most popular JRPG franchise going around. I am, of course, talking about Final Fantasy Tactics. Back then, it set the bar for what was possible in terms of strategic grid-based gameplay and quality storytelling. The incredible thing is that 25 years later, it still is the bar for many people, including myself. Final Fantasy Tactics is my favourite SRPG of all time, and I'm going to tell you why it has a spot so high on my list. Starting with the story, Tactics delivers one of the most intricate and politically charged narratives in the entire FF series. Back when I was younger, a lot of its themes and plot points did go over my head, but as I've grown older, I've grown to really appreciate more mature, complex political narratives in my RPGs. Set in the medieval-inspired kingdom of Ivalice, the story follows Ramza, a young noble caught in the chaos of a civil war known as the Lion War. This story is full of betrayal, twists, turns, and a plethora of impactful story beats. There's also no shortage of outstanding characters, with the journeys of Ramza and Delita in particular something that everyone should experience. The story alone is one of the best out there, and more than enough reason to play this classic. However, the fact that it's supported by such incredible gameplay is what makes FF Tactics one of the best RPGs ever made. This combat presents what you'd expect from the genre. Battles unfold on a 3D tiled-based map. Terrain heights and obstacles affect movement and attack range, with the character's attack order dictated by their speed stat. It's essentially an extremely well-implemented grid-based combat system where you have to think about a load of different factors before every move, else you'll probably get slaughtered. But I think the major thing that makes this combat so fun is the outstanding job system. Characters start as basic classes such as squires or chemists and unlock advanced jobs such as samurais or summoners by earning job points. Mixing and matching the abilities from multiple classes provides loads of options in creating hybrid builds. It is so fun to tinker with this in the menus and then send your characters out to the battlefield to see what damage they can do. If, for whatever reason, you've never had the chance to experience the masterpiece that is FF Tactics, then you are in luck because it's receiving a remaster in September. Based on the hype surrounding Persona 5, I was expecting a lot from the game, and I'll tell you what, it certainly delivered on just about every level. This game earns the lucky 13th spot for so many reasons, but I'm going to start off with its presentation. It's not just the soundtrack and the anime style visuals that are close to perfection, but also the other visual elements such as the menus and the graphics. Like the way that the characters move once the battle is over. This may seem insignificant to someone who hasn't played the game, but when a game does little things like this so well all the time, you know it's something special. Persona 5's story begins with the main character being arrested after breaking into a casino. This leads to him being thrown into an interrogation room, and the majority of this lengthy narrative is told as a flashback covering all of the events leading up to the arrest. Back at the very beginning, you learn of the main character's power that allows him to enter people's subconsciousness and change their hearts. These subconscious areas are the dungeons of the game, and they are called palaces. Successfully reaching the end of each palace will basically cleanse that person of all of their darkness and turn them into better people. And this is what makes up about half of the game, trekking through dungeons, fighting enemy after enemy, and working your way to the final palace boss. When it comes to the combat, in typical Shin Megami Tensei style, exploiting weaknesses is the key to victory. The core mechanics of this game work around this. For instance, casting fire on an enemy who's weak against fire will deal more damage, give you another turn, and knock down the enemy. You have to think about your actions at all times, or you could be completely decimated in a single turn. This combat works exceptionally well, with its true excellence being highlighted in the boss fights at the end of each palace, which are nothing short of sensational. The other half of the game takes place in town, where you'll get to choose how to spend each day. This may be spending time with NPCs to increase your relationships, or leveling up your social skills to unlock further side quests. This is time management at its best. Every single day presents you with a plethora of options, and it never feels like there's enough time to do everything that you want. So many options, so little time. You probably get the idea by now how much I love this game. There's very little not to love about it. Persona 5 and its enhanced version Royale is outstanding and goes above and beyond in just about every area. The debut title from the Xenoblade sub-series could not have started things off any better. Playing it for the first time back in 2011, I had heard a bit about it, but I was in no way prepared for it to blow my mind in the ways that it did. Xenoblade's story unfolds on the colossal bodies of two ancient titans whose final battle left them frozen in time, becoming the lands where civilizations now thrive. The game centers around Shulk, who discovers that he can wield the Monado, a mysterious sword capable of predicting the future and harming the mechanical Mechon. After a devastating attack on his colony, Shulk sets out on a journey of revenge as he and his party travel across the vast landscapes of the two giant titans. I was hooked from the very start, and every time I was coming to grips with what was going on, I would be hit with something new, and this happened right up until the very end. Also worth noting is the more recent remaster features a brand new epilogue scenario titled Futures Connected. This is set 1 year after the main game's events and focuses on the character Melia. If you want to get the most out of this outstanding story, that is the one to play. Now, the excellence of the game doesn't stop with the storytelling. Just about every other aspect is top tier too, especially the exploration. All these years later, I think it is still the bar when it comes to JRPG exploration. The regions are massive, absolutely stunning, and full of things to do, whether it be taking on the large variety of creatures, collecting items to fill the collectopedia, or hunting high and low to discover all of the secret locations. Few games have ever encouraged me so much to explore every single inch of its world. When it comes to the combat, your characters auto-attack when in range, while the player manually activates arts. These arts have different bonuses and cooldowns, such as dealing extra damage when using an art from behind. A unique mechanic here called Visions allows Shulk to foresee incoming attacks and adjust tactics accordingly, and this was really innovative and it ties to the story really well. And who could forget the outstanding soundtrack led by Yoko Shimomura, which is full of epic battle themes, atmospheric field tracks, and emotional pieces that hit hard. Xenoblade Chronicles is such an outstanding game in every way, and the crazy thing is that it's arguably not even the best in this sub-series. Part of me feels so bad that Final Fantasy X couldn't quite scrape into my top 10, but then I look at the games ahead of it and I don't feel so bad. I remember playing this game for the first time in a department store and being absolutely blown away with its beauty, storytelling, music, and epic pre-rendered cutscenes. I only got to play it for about an hour, but I knew I had to do everything I could to get my hands on it for real. Fast forward nearly 25 years, and the high praise that I once had for this classic has not diminished in any way. If anything, it has grown. The story follows Titus, a star athlete from the high-tech city of Zanarkand, who is mysteriously transported to the world of Spira after an attack by a mysterious entity known as Sin. Here, he joins a summoner named Yuna and her guardians on a pilgrimage to defeat Sin. There is just so much that I love about this story and the characters. The game is jam-packed full of moments that will make you laugh and that will make you cry, and as strange as it sounds, Titus's laugh even has a place in my heart. Then we have the combat, which takes a completely different route than its ATB predecessors. This time, there is a clear order to a character's actions based on their stats, with reserve characters able to jump in and out at any time. Each character also has their own abilities and paths on the sphere grid, shaping their combat roles, but you know, you could turn just about anyone into just about anything if you really wanted to. I also loved how summons could also be controlled rather than just appearing for a single attack. There really isn't anything too complex here, but for what we're given, it works exceptionally well, and the many super bosses will certainly test your skills if you're willing to take the time to prepare for them. Other standout features include the incredible soundtrack and the voice acting for its time. I mean, teenage me just getting into the metal genre and hearing Otherworld for the first time, it was just so cool. And who can deny Zanarkand as being one of the most iconic tracks in the entire FF catalogue? Was Final Fantasy X the last quality FF game? Absolutely not, but I will say that it was the last one that truly captured that special traditional feeling of the era, and for that, Final Fantasy X has cemented itself at number 11. Chained Echoes is a game that I initially had absolutely no plans to play, but when everyone on the planet wouldn't stop talking about it, I got a serious case of FOMO and had to see what all the fuss was about for myself. And I am so glad that I did, because it turns out that Chained Echoes would be in my top 10 JRPGs of all time. Chained Echoes is inspired and plays clear tribute to the games that we loved in the past, such as Suikoden, Chrono Trigger, and Xenogears. The game takes place on the continent of Landis, with its three kingdoms having been at war for generations. The main character, Glenn, is a young mercenary hired to fight in the war and is tasked to destroy a crystal in possession of the enemy. Little did he know that destroying this crystal would instantly destroy everything around him except for him and his mercenary friend, Kylian. Consumed by guilt, Glenn sets out to find out more about the mysterious crystal and to prevent a similar tragedy from happening again. Chained Echo's story is sensational. I was completely hooked from start to finish, and after those end credits rolled, I was left wanting more. There are so many great moments throughout this lengthy tale, with many story beats and other mechanics reminding me of my favourite JRPGs of the past. This story is supported by an excellent cast of characters who are all unique and likeable in their own ways, with their own reasons to fight alongside Glenn. There is a very large cast of playable party members too, some of which are entirely optional, and I loved this. One of the highlights of Chained Echoes for me was learning about their pasts, and some of these twists and revolutions were highly emotional. Then we have the turn-based combat, which is nothing short of sensational. You take 4 characters into battle at a time, and the large majority of your actions will be using your character's unique skills. The major factor that makes this combat so good is the overdrive system. There are 3 states to the overdrive gauge, and the skills that you use will cause your position on the gauge to move left and right. The left portion of the gauge is yellow, where you dish out and receive normal damage. Then there's a sweet spot green, where you deal more damage and receive less damage. You're going to want to be in this area most of the time. Finally, there's red, where you deal less damage and receive more damage. If you're in the red, you probably won't last too long. Keeping it in the green is crucial, and this means that you'll constantly have to change your battle strategy to ensure that you use the right skills. This is risk reward at its best. Now, there are far more reasons why Chained Echoes ranks so highly for me. There's the gorgeous pixel visuals, the outstanding soundtrack, the great exploration, the intense mech battles, the fun upgrade mechanics, the HQ building and NPC recruiting, and a load of optional content to sink your teeth into. Chained Echoes is quite simply one of the best JRPGs ever made, and if you haven't given it a go, right now is the perfect time to play it for yourself. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is close to being the ultimate JRPG experience because when you think about it, there really is a complete focus on absolutely everything that makes the genre so great. Xenoblade 3 takes place on Aeonis, with 2 opposing forces engaged in a never-ending war with one another. You see, the people of the world are born from their queen and are only given a 10-year lifespan. During this time, they're forced to kill the enemy in order to recharge their colony's flame clock. If they don't kill, their flame clock will run dry, which will lead to their death. They live to fight with the only aim to survive 10 years and return to the queen's embrace. Noah and his party members soon gain the power of Ouroboros, which allow them to stand up against the true enemy and solve the many mysteries regarding why the world works the way it does. This sets the tone for an incredibly depressing game. There are some heavy themes and a lot of emotion as the characters come to terms with themselves, with loss, and with the truths of the world. Personally, I was playing this game when I lost somebody very close to me, and oh boy, did this game hit hard, which is probably a big reason why I connected with it so much. Xenoblade 3 is an incredibly story, character, and cutscene heavy game, and I could not find flaw in these areas in any way. In a previous entry, I mentioned that the original Xenoblade Chronicles became the bar for comparing JRPG world exploration. When it comes to this one, I do not think any JRPG exists with such a massive, detailed, handcrafted world. There is so much to find, and not all of it is easy to access, with a lot of it requiring you to return at a later date. Running around and exploring was one of the best parts of this game. Then we have the outstanding combat system. There is a lot going on here. You control one character at a time but can switch between them on the go. Now, this may seem crazy, but there will be 6 selectable party members fighting at the same time, plus a 7th hero who can't be controlled. You're probably thinking that this would be chaotic, and yeah, it really is a lot of the time. Like the other Xenoblade games, each character will auto-attack, but it's up to you to select the class-specific arts at the right time. Another major feature is the ability to fuse with other party members into an Ouroboros for a limited amount of time. This will not only allow you to dish out some decent damage, but will also keep you safe from harm, so you have to strategically choose the best time to use this form. I really could go on forever about how amazing the Xenoblade Chronicles 3 experience is, but we have more titles to count down, so let's proceed with that. After the global popularity of both FF7 and FF8, people had some very high expectations for Final Fantasy IX, and oh boy, did it deliver. Things were a little bit different this time around though, as the game returned to its series roots, presenting more of a traditional fantasy setting. To be completely honest, at this point in time, it seemed like Square had the Final Fantasy formula down perfectly, a formula which fans 20 years later are still screaming for. FF9 unfolds in the world of Gaia, where a thief named Zidane kidnaps Princess Garnet only to discover that she wanted to escape her kingdom anyway. As war brews across the continent, Zidane and his party uncovers a deeper threat, and this takes them on an incredibly memorable journey across the entire world. There's just something so special about this story for me, and this is driven by an outstanding cast of characters and the personal struggles that they're forced to deal with, like Vivi. How can you not absolutely love Vivi? Have you ever met anyone that doesn't love this little dude? Without spoiling anything, FF9 also takes the mantle of my favourite ending in the series, thanks to its perfect mix of emotion and feel-good energy. When it comes to the combat, FF9 features a similar turn-based system to its predecessors. This time, however, each character has a unique role and skill set tied to their identity, such as Garnet being able to cast white magic and summon, while Steiner can use sword arts and magic swords. This combat is a lot of fun, and I really appreciated how each character is so different. Another standout feature for me is the upgrade mechanics, where characters can equip weapons and gear to learn abilities which can be toggled on and off using the limited ability points. It's so satisfying and rewarding to learn new abilities and then constantly chop and change your equipment to learn even more. Aside from this, you have a large vast world to explore full of secrets and optional content, some really cool mini-games including Chocobo Hot and Cold, and as you'd expect, a memorable soundtrack full of classics. FF9 may not be my favourite FF game of all time, but it's damn close, and at this point, I'm still waiting patiently for an official announcement regarding a complete remake. If I could name you one incredible JRPG series that has been completely lost in time and unknown to many, it would be Shadow Hearts. While all of the games in the series have something to offer, Shadow Hearts 2 Covenant is by far the best in the series. Covenant takes place half a year after the events of the original game, where a German officer, Karen, leads an assault on a town to slay a demon. Who is this demon, you ask? Yuri Hyuga, who is also the protagonist of the first Shadow Hearts title. Yuri is amazing. This guy has badass written all over him. If he isn't up there with your favourite protagonist ever after playing this game, there's a problem. His badassness is largely due to his ability to turn into demons, and in true Shadow Hearts form, he is introduced in pure style with an absolute gem of a cinematic. Soon, Karen and Yuri join forces to investigate a terrorist organization in order to uncover their motives, and from here on, you best hang on to your seats because Shadow Hearts Covenant is one hell of a ride. The story is hands down superb and is brilliantly told through many well-animated, well-voiced cutscenes. There are twists and turns around every corner, right up into the ending that will no doubt cause you to rethink everything that you've just witnessed. Now, despite the dark, mature setting and themes, Covenant is actually one of the funniest games I've played. Countless times, the well-written characters and dialogue and the subtle and sometimes not so subtle sexual references had me laughing out loud. This mix of darker themes and humour just worked so well together. Now, Shadow Hearts 1 was widely praised for its Judgment Ring system, and this excellent mechanic not only makes a return but comes with many quality enhancements. For those new to the series, the Judgment Ring is a ring that appears when you select an action in battle. Rather than simply attacking the enemy when you choose an attack, you will instead need to carefully time your strikes in order to pull off the attack and also maximise the damage. This system works so well and ensures you'll always have to be paying attention even when attacking regular enemies. In addition to regular attacks, each character can perform unique abilities, cast equipped magic, or set up combination attacks with other allies to maximise damage output. All of these elements combined ensures that every single battle is a blast. Shadow Hearts Covenant is the whole package. Its incredible cutscene-driven storytelling, deep memorable characters, engaging battle system, and amount of content will ensure that every minute of this 50-hour journey will have you hooked. If you ever get a chance to give this one a go, make sure you do. You will not regret it. To be honest, I am not the biggest Yakuza fan in the world. I enjoyed the ones that I played, but I was nowhere near up to date with Kazuma's story, which is why I was happy to jump into Like a Dragon as it featured a brand new protagonist, Ichiban Kasuga. To put simply, it did not take long to absolutely fall in love with Ichiban and get completely absorbed into his story. The majority of Yakuza Like a Dragon takes place in Yokohama. After taking the fall for the Arakara family of the Tojo clan and spending 18 years behind bars, Ichiban is released from prison to find that things have changed. Investigating just what went down over those 18 years and what happened to the Tojo clan is Ichiban's first objective, and this leads him down a rabbit hole of conspiracies. Long story short, to avoid any spoilers, the storytelling, writing, dialogue, and voice acting is all exceptional. And the same can be said about the direct sequel, Infinite Wealth, which is set in Hawaii. Something that I loved so much about these games is that while the main story is very mature and serious, there is plenty of humour sprinkled throughout, which is something that not too many games tend to do. One minute you may be learning about the character's tragic childhood, and the next you could be laughing your ass off witnessing the most unhinged, unexpected of scenes. Another standout feature of these games, and the entire Yakuza series in general, is a plethora of side quests, mini-games, and other challenges. There is a lot to do, and it will take completionists well over 100 hours for each game if they want to see and collect everything. Like a Dragon is second to none when it comes to the quality and quantity of its minigames. They can be found around every corner of the city, ranging from battle cages to can collecting to staying awake at the movie theatre to the full arcade mode of Virtual Fighter 5, which is just insane. Like a Dragon is also the series' first attempt at turn-based combat, and for the most part it works really well, with clear improvements and welcomed additions being made to Infinite Wealth. Something that I liked about the combat is how it manages to capture the beat-em-up style that the series is known for despite being turn-based. Just take the camera for example. It is a single camera shot that rotates around the battlefield depending on whose turn it is, and this kinda reminds me of a bystander filming a street fight. These games also have a really fun job system with the ability to mix and match skills from different classes. I love everything about these incredible games, in particular the protagonist Ichiban, who is one of my favourites of all time. This sub-series has started so strongly, and I cannot wait to see what we have in store next. At number 5, we have, once again, multiple titles that have been lumped together, and there are a few reasons for this. One is that while OG FF7 and Remake Rebirth may feel like entirely different experiences, they are somewhat similar retellings of events. Secondly, I would have them both in this exact spot. I love OG and I love Remake to pieces, and they both deserve to be in the top 5 of all time. And thirdly, grouping these similar masterpieces allows for more amazing titles to be in my top 10. With that out of the way, what exactly do I love so much about Final Fantasy VII? Pretty much everything is a simple answer. Playing the role of Cloud Strife and teaming up with a lovable cast of characters to stop Shinra and Sephiroth from destroying the planet is such a nostalgic journey for me. The story is incredible, full of twists and turns, the characters and villains are so memorable, and just exploring the world doing everything I possibly can is an experience that I will never get sick of. Then we have the remake, which is far more than simply a remake. Reimagining, sequel, you decide. I absolutely love how the remake trilogy isn't just expanding the universe that we know and love, it is also raising even more questions. At this point, we're 2/3 of the way through the trilogy, and no one knows what the hell is going on. I have not seen theory crafting like this in years, but I am absolutely here for it. Now, while the turn-based combat of the original was great for its time, it really doesn't offer anything unique or gripping for a modern gamer. And that's where the remake combat comes in, which is one of my favourite combat systems ever. The way it works is that you control one party member at a time, and after unleashing enough basic attacks, you will fill up the character's ATB gauge. When full, you can dramatically slow down time and spend your full gauges on using an item, a spell, or an ability, which is how you'll dish out the majority of your damage or heal your allies. This outstanding system creates some incredible boss fights too, and I was always on the edge of my seat switching between characters, using every tool at my disposal. Then we have the countless other things that makes these remakes so good. The incredible reorchestrated soundtrack, huge open maps with loads to explore and discover, and a never-ending supply of minigames, which I know isn't for everybody, but is totally my jam. I absolutely love OG FF7. I absolutely love Remake. I absolutely love Rebirth. And if this trend continues, I will absolutely love the third in the trilogy just as much. It just hurts that we have to wait so long for it. The word Xenogears has so much meaning for me. Hearing this title immediately fills me with nostalgia and makes me think if only they made them like they used to. Xenogears is not a perfect game, if there is such a thing, but I'll tell you what, it is pretty damn close. If you asked any Xenogears fan what makes this game so good, they would tell you it is the story. The game begins with a cinematic of a ship crash landing onto a planet, a purple-haired girl, things falling from the sky, and plenty of other things that don't make sense. And that is Xenogears' story in a nutshell. A lot of things that don't make any sense. Until they do. You play the role of Faye, who lost his memory before the events of the game. This may sound like just another amnesia plot, but Xenogears is a rare example of a game that does it so well. Faye's journey and learning about him alongside him is a large part of what makes Xenogears so exceptional. Now, this narrative is fairly straightforward to start with. The first 15 hours or so is designed to introduce the characters and set up the plot, but after that, the bombardment of mystery begins. Finding the answers to these questions is what makes this overly complex plot so enjoyable to play. This complexity is also what makes multiple playthroughs so enjoyable, as there's always little things I notice every time I play through. When it comes to the combat, Xenogears features two battle systems, the first being with your characters and the second when they pilot their gears. The character battles are probably what you'd expect from a game of the era. The defining feature here is the death blow system. Your characters have several action points each turn that they can spend on weak, medium or heavy attacks, costing 1, 2 and 3 AP respectively. If they are used in a certain combination, a death blow will be unleashed. To learn a death blow, the character has to input that certain button combination a specific number of times. Now, Xenogears is an epic game, and battling to the death in giant gears really highlights this epicness. The key difference between the two battle systems is that this one has fuel to worry about. Every time your gears attack, they will consume fuel. Fuel is also consumed at a much higher rate if you activate your gears boosters, which significantly speeds up your action gauge. This fuel management aspect plays a huge role in how you approach each boss fight. The 1990s is often referred to as the golden age of JRPGs for a reason, and it's games like Xenogears that helped give this era that title. If you're a fan of games with exceptional stories, then Xenogears is a title that you cannot afford to miss. Would you look at that? Another Final Fantasy game. For a bit of context, I was about 11 years old when I first played Final Fantasy VIII. Having watched my childhood friend play through a bit of FF7, I kinda knew what I was getting into, but I had no idea how obsessed I would get with not only this game, but eventually the genre as a whole. FF8 was my gateway drug into JRPGs, and I wouldn't have it any other way. The game follows Squall Leonhardt and his party of Seeds, who are specialized mercenaries with the main goal of defeating sorceresses. The early parts of the game involve the group taking on missions to ultimately stop a sorceress named Edea, who has seized control over Galbadia and will stop at nothing to achieve her goals. The later parts of the game? Well, let's just say that it gets a bit more complicated than that thanks to some good old-fashioned time travel, or time compression with a K. There are some incredible moments here, such as the garden battle and when Squall and Renoa unite on the Ragnarok with Eyes on Me playing. I had a save file for this part and played this scene countless times. Yeah, I used to be a massive fan of this story, and all this time later, nothing has changed. The colourful cast of characters also feel like a bunch of old friends who I haven't seen since my high school days. I love the way my old pal Squall grows into a leader and how his relationship with Renoa builds through the course of the game. And my BFF Laguna, who is one of the greatest characters in the game and in desperate need of more screen time. The world, the characters, and the journey of FF8 really is my safe space. When it comes to the combat, FF8 has a similar ATB combat system to its predecessors, but with a few core changes. To start with, there is no longer MP. Magic spells are instead stocked by characters, and if you run out, you'll have to obtain more. Then there's limit breaks, which now have a chance to activate when a character character's HP is low. Spamming the circle button to re-roll the limit break's appearance and annihilating enemies with moves like Lionheart and Duel still makes me feel absolutely godly. Now, one of the things that divided fans of the FF series is the junction system where you can attach different magic spells to boost particular stats. Yes, this system is a bit complicated, even compared to upgrade systems these days, but I really appreciated its depth and flexibility. I also wouldn't be able to live with myself if I didn't mention the soundtrack, which just may be my favourite of all time. It is exceptional, and you'll find few people who disagree, even if they're not fans of the game itself. In 1999, Final Fantasy VIII carved itself out a special place in my heart, and it has remained there ever since. From the moment Clair Obscur Expedition 33 was first announced, I knew that we were in for something special, but I had no idea how special it would be. I'm sure you've heard the praise echoing around the internet. Well, what you've heard is absolutely on point. Expedition 33 is hands down one of the greatest games of all time. The story begins in a city where a mysterious being known as the Paintress awakens annually to paint a number on a monolith. This number curses all those of that age to die. Refusing to succumb to this fate, the city sends yearly expeditions to the unexplored lands in hope of putting an end to the Paintress. These annual expeditions are made up of those who are going to die that year. The game centers around Expedition 33, led by Gustav, who sets out to the unknown lands following in the footsteps of the other expeditions who left before them. And from this point, wowee, you are in for a ride. This story is so good with impeccable pacing. There are moments that will make you cry, that will have you on the edge of your seat, and that will make your jaw drop to the floor wondering what the hell is going on. I got 33 reasons to play Clair Obscur, and the story is just one. Something that I did not expect when going into this game was how much I would enjoy the exploration. Firstly, we have the overworld, which is beautiful. From here, you can enter separate areas. Each of these areas are linear in design, but they do have many optional areas off the path. If I could liken this exploration to anything, it would be Dark Souls. To be honest, I really don't know what I like the most about Clair Obscur, as the music and the art design are two other standout features, but there's also the combat, which is one of my favourite RPG combat systems ever. You can take 3 party members into each battle, each having an entirely unique playstyle, and this was really impressive. Regardless of who you choose, AP management will always need to be considered. You can accumulate AP in a number of ways, with each ability costing a different amount. When you do use an ability, you will need to time some button presses to maximize their effectiveness. This timing is never difficult, but it does ensure that you'll need to stay on the ball. Something that is difficult is timing defensive options when enemies attack. There have been many games that have used this time defensive mechanic since the dawn of RPG time, but none have come even close to how amazing it is here. Every enemy attack can be avoided if your timing is right, but this is harder than it looks. You see, all enemies have multiple moves that they unleash, with many of these having several hits. This is just so much fun and makes it possible to steamroll through the entire game without being hit if you're good enough, which I was definitely not. Hopefully, you've got the message loud and clear. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is outstanding, and it would have to be to take my number 2 spot of all time. "99 entries down and hours of listening to me talk. It has brought us to this. Are we ready? This game is, in my eyes, the best JRPG ever made. But who are we kidding? You know what it is. Suikoden 2, the best game from my favourite series of all time. This epic journey is set 3 years after the events of the first game and begins when Rue and Joey, members of the Highland Army's Youth Brigade, discover that their own commander, Luca Blight, has orchestrated an attack on their camp in order to provoke a war with the city-states. Lucky to escape with their lives, the two soon get taken in by the opposition and eventually team up with them in hope of stopping the Highland Army's tyranny. And this is one thing that makes Suikoden 2 so amazing. The journey of starting as the weak, powerless underdogs in a seemingly hopeless situation to becoming an absolute powerhouse army capable of standing up against other behemoth powers. And let me tell you now, there are so many incredible moments here, many of which are among my favourite moments in any video game. Case in point, the epic battle against Luca Blight. This is just one of the most insane boss fights ever. Something else that makes the game so incredible is the HQ system. Early in the game, you'll take control of an old run-down castle and town and turn it into your own headquarters. As you recruit more and more characters around the world, this HQ will be filled with new features and also upgrade its structure. It is such a great feeling to recruit someone for the first time and then rush back home to see what they bring to the table. This HQ is also the home of the amazing cooking minigame, which is up there with my favourite minigames ever. Another thing that makes Suikoden 2 so great is the multiple combat systems. Starting with the main combat, we have a fairly simple turn-based system. You can take 6 characters into battle, with 3 being placed in the front and 3 being placed in the back. Then there's the large-scale war battles, which feature a Fire Emblem-style grid-based gameplay, and I've always loved this system. Finally, there's the 1 vs 1 duels that are reserved for the key moments in the story. While later installments of the series arguably saw improvements in all of these systems for me, they are most iconic and memorable in Suikoden 2. And I could never forgive myself if I didn't mention Miki Higashino's masterclass soundtrack. Every single track sounds amazing and is perfect for its purpose. It's one of my favourite soundtracks ever. Suikoden 2 is an experience like no other, and I could not think of another JRPG more deserving for my #1 spot in my favourite JRPGs of all time. Okay guys and girls, my job is done. After nearly a year in the making, I have successfully counted down my top 100 JRPGs of all time. Wowee, what a ride that was. I also enjoyed every single second of making these videos as I was constantly reminded why I love this genre so much. Now, before I go into hibernation for a while, I would just like to send a huge thank you your way. I know some of you have been along for this entire ride, and I have loved reading all your comments and chatting to you all about these great games. If you got any enjoyment at all out of this video or the series, it would help me out big time to hit that like button and sub for more JRPG content coming soon. This was Hellfire RPGs. It has been a pleasure. See you next time.